following program is distributed by the Bears Barroom Radio Network. It's intended for all audiences. Draft on Tap with Danny Shimon and Neil Stopchenski.
Hey everybody, it's Aldo Gandia. Sunday, January 31st. We are about 24 hours after the end of the Reese's Senior Bowl, and that's going to be the topic of this special Draft on Tap. But also, we're going to talk about the latest news in the NFL and that huge trade, Matt Stafford going to the Rams for a bunch of draft picks. Oh, and also the Rams threw in Jared Goff in that deal to get rid of that contract and a quarterback they clearly did not appreciate very much. Let me bring the guys in. Let me start off with our senior draft analyst, Danny Shimon. How are you, brother?
I'm doing great. Just trying to bear myself out of the snow, about 7 or 8 inches here.
Yeah, it's not fun. It's not fun. For those of you people watching outside the Chicago area, we've got tons of wet, heavy snow to deal with. And Danny, unfortunately, was out there shoveling. I had somebody to shovel me my stuff. You know, I wasn't.
We don't make the big money you do there, Mr. Gandia.
You mean Braggsy didn't come up and shovel your driveway for you there, Danny?
I offered him the job. He said no. And then also Neil Stopchinski is with us. Neil, how are you, brother?
Doing well, boys. Well, I'm down here in Bucktown. We got probably at least 10 inches of snow on the ground. I think downtown got hit worse. Aubrey and I went down to Churchill or at Holy Name this morning, got the good word, and then walked around town a little bit. Got a couple of cheeseburgers at Billy Goat Tavern over there underneath the bridge.
Nice.
But I wouldn't be surprised if there was at least a foot of snow on the ground in the city, and it's still going. We're going to keep getting hit until at least after 6.
Yeah,
so
but doesn't mess with the signal, and we got uninterrupted football talk here for the next 60, 90, 120 minutes, however long we go. We are open-ended, and so, guys, we got to start with the big news, right? Before we talk about the Senior Bowl, and we're going to go in depth into the Senior Bowl, we're going to talk about the quarterbacks, the running backs, the wide receivers, the offensive linemen, and the defensive players from yesterday's Senior Bowl at Mobile, Alabama, and offer your expert commentary on those players. But first, we've got to talk about this Matt Stafford trade. Holy cow, it is one of the biggest trades in NFL recent history. Matt Stafford going to the Rams for Jared Goff, 2 number 1 draft picks, and a 3rd rounder. Let me start with you, Danny. What are your thoughts on that trade?
Yeah, I was floored by the draft capital that ended up going back to the Lions there that the Rams gave up. I mean, we were talking Thursday night about the dream scenario of the Bears, what they have to give up to get Deshaun Watson. I think that just went up, in my opinion. I mean, if Matthew Stafford gets 2 first-round picks and a 3rd, and I know part of that is because they're taking on Jared Goff's contract, but still, man. I mean, I thought at best you could probably get Stafford for a 2nd-round pick at best, and I mean to get 2 firsts and a 3rd, and throwing Goff, who I'm not really that high on anyway, but still, I mean, I think if you go for a guy like Deshaun Watson, you're talking about 3, possibly 4 first-round picks, some other day 2 picks. The draft capital just floored me.
It is amazing. Neil, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of people blowing up on social media about how much how much fleecing happened yesterday. But I mean, when you look at evening out this trade, they had to give up the draft picks, right? The draft picks had to be a part of this in order to even this thing out a little bit because of the contract. So it makes a lot of sense when you really stop to think about it and break down all the terms and even things out and do the kind of balance sheet thing where you look at the bottom line a little bit, right? But I mean, you look at what the Lions get back. I mean, yeah, what they bring back as far as an arm goes is still somebody that can operate unless they have a bunch of weapons, right? Jared Goff is really good with a bunch of weapons, and Matt Stafford was really good with a bunch of weapons. They got back a guy that doesn't have as talented of an arm that needs the same type of situation as before. So it's really just sort of like a holding pin until they can figure out what they're going to do moving forward.
And my first inclination was, are they going to keep Goff? But it sounds like they're going to keep Goff. But what I would do is I don't think the Lions are out of the quarterback business in terms of the draft is concerned. So
I don't think so either.
Even with that, I mean, like I think it's number 7, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. The Lions pick is is I think they, you know, with the draft capital they got back now from the Rams, I think they double down at quarterback, take their young quarterback, whoever's available there, whoever they like. And now they have Goff for a year or however long it takes for them to get rid of that contract. And then they groom that young quarterback to come in. So, you know, I think that surprises me is that they're going to keep Goff and then they're going to double down and they're going to go ahead and get that young quarterback in there.
Right.
That's a really good point, because I was looking at how that was going to impact the drafted quarterbacks. And I was thinking, well, now the Lions, you know, won't draft the quarterback, but you're right. That's not necessarily the case. They may target one in the first round. And if they don't, they probably will in the second round, which could potentially impact the Bears too, if they don't pick up a quarterback in the first round. So that's a really, really good point. Also, I wanted to, you know, ask you guys your opinion on how this impacts the Chicago Bears. Now they're going to face Jared Goff 2 times a year. They actually got to face Stafford in a road game in Los Angeles next season, but they probably won't face him again unless it's a playoff matchup for 5 years or that rotation on the schedule goes. But let's focus on Goff. If he does remain as the Lions starting quarterback, that's got to be good news, even though he's 2-1 versus the Chicago Bears in lifetime. The one game that is memorable for all of us is that game at Soldier Field where the Bears defense and the weather got to him and he just looked awful, throwing 3 interceptions. Do you think that's sustainable? Do you think we'll see more of those kinds of performances against the Bears? Neil, start with you.
I think generally this defense has always played pretty well against Jared Goff by and large. And I'm really kind of concerned about that Rams game now with Matt Stafford and weapons. That becomes a much different of a deal. And I don't know if you guys saw the coverage today as far as like betting odds and stuff, but that turned the Rams into a 15-1 to a 12-1 odds to win the Super Bowl next year. So that's a massive money move right there for the Rams as far as betting goes.
Yeah, as far as me is concerned, I mean, I'm not really impressed with Jared Goff. I think we all know that, you know, he doesn't play well outdoors, especially in cold weather and inclement weather. So I think he's a guy that, you know, the Bears have had, you know, relative success. I know that's 2-1 record, but I think both those victories were in LA or in LA. So I'm not really concerned, you know, in terms of the Lions, you know, quarterback Goff. I think be more concerned in terms of the kid they might draft at number 7, you know, whether it's, you know, a Mac Jones or a Trey Lance or even the, the kid from Ohio State. I'm drawing a blank here. Help me out, Neil. It's early Sunday morning. No, from Ohio State. My guy.
From Iowa State.
Ohio State.
Oh, Ohio State. Yeah, Justin Fields.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Sunday
DJ
morning.
had him at number 7 yesterday.
It's Sunday morning. I've shoveled a lot of snow. I'm
actually
just
Sunday afternoon there, kid.
Sunday afternoon. See, it's Sunday afternoon. I've shoveled a lot of snow. I'm all discombobulated. I don't know what the hell's going on anymore.
Well, we're still glad to have you, Danny.
Thank you. Glad to be had.
You know, I'll tell you that the one thing that I'm really looking forward to is the fact that this announces that the Detroit Lions are in long-term rebuilding mode. Clearly, you know, they're not getting a number 1 draft pick this season. So they are counting on these draft picks for the future. They're going to get, in this upcoming draft, they'll get a 3rd rounder and they get Goff. That's the impact for the 2021 season. And then 2022, they'll get a 1st rounder in 2023. So the new general manager on that team has told management, sorry, Martha Ford, you may not be alive by the time we win the Super Bowl because this is going to take a while to fix. We're going to have to go in there and do it through the draft and take our time. So that is good for the Chicago Bears because the Bears appear to be still in win now mode, unless over the next several weeks we see Ryan Pace start to dismantle the team and start to build for a long-term future. It still appears when you've got the Robert Quinns and the Khalil Macks and the Akeem Hicks on your roster as they are currently, it still appears that they are in a win now mode. And so potentially we will have 2 victories against the Detroit Lions in the division. Anyone disagree with me on that or want to expound on that?
Other than, I mean, on paper, yeah, you should be able to, you know, beat a Detroit team, but you know how the saying goes, any given Sunday, right? Anything could happen. You know, Dan, you know, Campbell comes in, new head coach, talking about biting off kneecaps and you know, punch people in the mouth. So we'll see how that what happens there. But I mean, yeah, on paper, I expect that to be two victories for the Bears within the division. So that Detroit looks to be going into a full rebuild mode with a new GM, a new head coach, a new coaching staff, and all that stuff. So definitely look to see, you know, them being on the bottom of the standings.
Yeah, and I love Bellissimo's comment here is that the biggest loss to the Lions is the intestinal fortitude at quarterback, because you really can't compare that will to win that Stafford has over Jared Goff, which is ironic because Stafford has not won a playoff game in as many years with the Detroit Lions, and Goff has, but it has nothing to do with the quarterback play. It has to do with the overall team play. And so Stafford, to me, I thought, if Ryan Pace would have been able to work out a team-friendly deal and Stafford came to the Chicago Bears and was the quarterback for the next 3-5 years or whatever, I would have been happy with that, because I really believe in Stafford's ability to play the quarterback position at a high level. Yes, he hasn't won, but I blame that more on an organization that doesn't know how to win, that has not brought in people who know how to build a team to complement a quarterback of the quality of a Matt Stafford. Neil, your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think it's going to be okay either way. I was actually kind of transfixed there by Bellissimo's comment about Mac Jones. That was a really interesting comment he made. If you guys were listening to the hot mics during the telecast the other day, Mac was talking about how, hey, if this was a regular season game, I'd be all about playing right now. But I think he's just trying to, make a smart move and, keep himself healthy so that he doesn't completely damage his chances of, being taken as high as he is actually projected to be taken. The certain team in the Boston area heavily interested in taking him in the first. I don't know what team wouldn't be interested in taking him in the first, to be honest with you. He easily separated himself from the rest of the other 5 guys that are there this week.
Yeah, and then just for the people in our audio podcast, Bellissimo has put up in the chat room, I heard it from multiple people at Senior Bowl that Mac Jones didn't play partly because a certain team in the Boston area are heavily interested in taking him in the first round. Smoke and mirrors, ? I don't know. I think that, just like Neil said, I think he's a highly coveted quarterback. I know that a lot of people that I've run across in social media aren't high on Mac Jones. I personally am. I think he's a winner. I think he showed at the Senior Bowl practices that he can make those tight throws that people have been concerned about, because those Alabama wide receivers get separation at a moment's notice. Just like that, they're all of a sudden 5 yards open. But at the Senior Bowl, he showed in those practices that he can put the ball in there and complete passes even when the receivers are tightly covered. You guys saw the same thing, I imagine.
Yeah, 100%.
I love the kid. I mean, I was high on the kid coming into the season. I thought he was at best going to be probably a 2nd-round pick. He far exceeded my expectations. Like Neil mentioned, he's going to go top 15 in this draft. What was impressive about him mostly was within 3 days he had that offense down pat. We saw other quarterbacks struggle to kind of learn the plays, call the plays in the huddle. This guy was Mac Jones was directing running backs where to line up, the receivers where to line up. He was a guy like he had built a relationship with the receivers, with the running backs, with the coaches. I mean, everybody. I don't know if you saw the Thursday highlight where the Matt Rule was doing the bucket throw challenge, and he goes and he almost makes it, and then Mac Jones takes the ball, go here like this, just throws it right, and Rule's like, I can't believe you did that to me, and I'm that exchange. Right? That exchange had me like thinking, well, I mean, like Matt Rule, who has got the 8th pick in the draft, could very well take this kid. I mean, he's been with him for a week. He sees him. He knows his offense already. So, I mean, this guy's going to come into camp if the Panthers draft him, ready to go. I mean, he's already seen the offense. He already knows the coaching staff and all that stuff. So, I think that's the big advantage of coaching the Senior Bowl this year for both the Dolphins and the Panthers is exhibited right there with that relationship between Matt Rule and potentially a draft pick of the Panthers and Mac Jones. So, I mean, the kid was so impressive. I heard interviews were off the chart with him in terms of his knowledge, his recall ability. I mean, the guy already has his bachelor's degree and he's working on his master's at Alabama. So, I mean, this guy is definitely a smart kid. And I think all he did was just impress and cement himself, not only in the first round, but like Neil said, in the top 15 in the first round. And going back to what Bellissimo was referring to, I think there's always been a little connection there with Bill Belichick and the Patriots, Nick Saban, his former assistant, and Alabama. And I think that's the correlation a lot of people are making now with him being a former Belichick disciple. This quarterback coming from Alabama would be a perfect fit for the Patriots. So I think that's a connection being made by a lot of people there. And the Patriots, I think, at number 15. So if you're a team like the Bears, we talked about finding your guy and going up and getting him. Right now, it looks like the hot trade spot in the first round, it's got to be between 5 and 6. And I think that's the Falcons and the Eagles. Those are the two spots where if you're the Bears and you zero your guy, you find your guy, that's where you got to go get him. Whether it's a Mac Jones, whether it's a Trey Lance, whether it's Justin Fields, that's the area you got to go get your guy.
Here's the thing about Mac Jones too, and one of the things I think makes him really good is how loose he is. That there isn't a single tight cell in his body. He plays loose, he talks loose, he acts loose, he jokes loose. Everything about him is loose, but up here it's tight. That's the thing about him that I think really kind of separates himself.
That's like confidence and moxie. He knows he's got this down. He knows how to make these throws. He knows he's got confidence in himself and his abilities. Like I said, he learned the offense in 3 days, and he was running it like. And I bet you if he was playing yesterday in the game yesterday, I think we're going to see more highlights and a higher scoring game too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so often, I run up against people, again, on social media who don't like Mac Jones because of his lack of mobility. Hey, Tom Brady, when was the last time he rushed for 100 yards in a game? And I know that the game has changed, but Tom Brady is still winning, and he's slower than ever. So that doesn't matter. You can find ways to win. First of all, you've got to have that will to win. You've got to be a great leader, and you've got to be able to throw an accurate ball. And I think he's got all those three qualities, right, guys?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Accurate throws. Anticipation, throwing it to a spot, throwing a receivers open, being able to process pre and post snap. This a lot of things we talked about now with Mitch Trubisky where he struggles. These are the things that Mac Jones, highlights and excels at. He's not, elusive runner or anything like that, but he's also not, like we talked about on Thursday, he's not really a stiff back there either. We saw a couple of highlights in this week's practice where things broke down. He stepped up in the pocket, saw an opening, and it just took off. He's a guy that can get a first down or anything, something like that for you with his legs if he needs to. He's not a guy that's going to run wild, right, like a Trey Lance or Justin Fields or even a Mitch Trubisky for that matter. So, but definitely a guy who knows how to, keep plays alive in the pocket, can maneuver, can shift his legs, slide left and right, and if he needs to, he can also step up in the pocket if he feels pressure from the outside on both sides. So, he's a guy that's got pocket presence, and he's not the fleet as a foot, but he's a guy that can maneuver and can keep himself alive and give his receivers some time downfield to get open.
And we're looking at highlights from his 2020 season here, and you see a lot of highlights where he's throwing to receivers who are well covered. Yeah, you're going to definitely see a highlight like this one that, the defensive back fell and the receiver is wide open for the touchdown. But throughout the season, he did make that throws. And for the criticism of, well, look at the talent that was surrounding him. You know what? I think it's easier to evaluate guys when you're playing with NFL quality players as opposed to a Jamie Newman when he was at Wake Forest and he was playing with guys who probably aren't going to make the NFL, at least no more than 2 or 3, as opposed to a guy like Mac Jones, who is playing with an offensive line that more than half of them are going to be starting in the offensive line, and wide receivers are going to be first-round draft picks.
Guys, just go back to LSU a couple of years ago, right? And before, with they had Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry, those receivers, were playing with subpar quarterbacks at LSU, and lo and behold, they come to the NFL, and then their talent now is full, twofold. We see what kind of talented receivers they are, because their quarterback in college didn't give them the opportunity to shine. And I think now, just because Mac Jones has got these talented receivers, remember, he was down to Devontae Smith basically and Najee Harris most of the season once they lost Jalen Waddle. So, he had one receiver and one running back, really, and he had a very good offensive line as well. But however, it's not like he cannot. You still got to make the throws. You still got to put it in a spot where the receiver catches it in stride to be able to, get those yards after the catch, ability and all that stuff. So, don't discredit the kid just because he played with talented players. Just look at his tape, look at where he's placing the ball, look at his post and his pre and post snap ability to read coverages and know where to go with the football. He processes really quick already at a college level. He processes, really quick.
Well, let's not diminish also how far he's come as a quarterback as well. It's only a year and a half ago where he looked like complete garbage. Looked like he couldn't function. And all of a sudden he's winning national titles and he's completing passes at a high level and he's doing all the pre-post snap stuff. He's looking like an NFL quarterback. I mean, this kid has grown exponentially over the course of the past, 15, 16 months as a big time quarterback. So, I mean, that just goes to show you, he probably still has, a higher ceiling even to hit going forward. So, I mean, let's give the kid all of his credit, and let's also not pretend like he's a stiff either. Danny, you talked about it. The kid, people want to go ahead and bash on his athletic ability. He came out of an option offense in high school. right? The kid can move a little bit. He's not a standing statue back there.
Right.
He can move a little bit. He can make some plays with his legs. He's not the guy that's going to do it, consistently for 100 yards a game. He's not going to be a run first guy. He's not a legit dual threat guy. But if you need to get the kid to move around, escape the pocket, extend plays, he's going to be able to do that at least.
Yeah. Right. Not every quarterback's a Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes or a Josh Allen, guys who can use their feet to get first downs. There are quarterbacks that pocket presence, being able to kind of maneuver in the pocket, buy some more time, elude some pressure. That's key right there as well.
Absolutely. Mule Skinner asks, well, how many throws did he make in 2.8 seconds? And I can't answer that question right now, but I promise you this, Mule, that by the time we get to draft week, we'll have those answers, because right now these are like beginning of the postseason thoughts on all of these players. We're still got a lot of diving into. Just like every NFL team, none of the 32 teams has a board that is final. In fact, they haven't even started to build their board yet. They're still in the area of looking at tape, evaluating. And I got this from Greg Gabriel, who has professionally done this for the Chicago Bears, the New York Giants, and now is doing it over at the XFL. They're still in the process of evaluating tape. There's been a lot of underclassmen who are into the NFL, and so now they are activating that tape process. And so there's a lot of stuff to go through, and we will, by the time we get to draft week, and we have our own Chicago Bears mock draft here with Danny Shim and Neil Stopchinski telling me this is who you should take in the first round, and then I get to make that final decision. Boy, that's going to be so much fun, and I'm so happy to be teamed with these guys to make that decision. Now, I think this is talking about Mac Jones is a perfect transition to the next segment of our show, which is to talk about the quarterback play at yesterday's Senior Bowl. We saw a lot of play, and I think I got to tell you, first of all, my initial reaction was disappointment, but upon reflection and looking at some of the tape this morning, I'm not as disappointed as I was yesterday. So let me start with you, Danny, and tell me, what was your overall impression this morning? Because I know yesterday you didn't get an opportunity to see the game live, but you've been looking at tape and so forth. What's your overall impression of quarterback play at the Senior Bowl?
Right. A lot up and down for me. I mean, I like to see more of Sam Ellinger. I think just a one quarter. I mean, he had led 2 scoring drives, a field goal and a touchdown drive. And I want to see more, but I don't know if that was just the NFL people telling, the coaching staff, hey, you know what, we've seen Ellinger. We have an idea what he is. We want to see the other kids more. In terms of Kellen Mund, who was the game MVP, I mean, the game was reminiscent of his career, basically, at A&M. He's a guy that is up and down, right? He'd make some great throws, some great decisions with the ball, and then, a play later, actually a drive later, and you're like scratching your head, like, why would he throw it there? What kind of pre-snap read did he have here? So I think also, with Kellen Mund, the kid, physically, he's got it all. He's 6'2", 200 plus pounds. He's a dual threat running quarterback. He's a guy that can beat you with his legs and his arms. He's got the ball just jumps out of his arm. So he's got a super strong arm, can make all the throws. However, it's like, he'll make that great throw, a touchdown to Amari Rogers, where he slings it, up the seam, in between 2 defenders, right to Rogers. And then he'll throw balls where he's sailing the ball over the receiver, where he's got time. His feet are, kind of unbalanced in the pocket. So that's the thing with Kellen Mund. It's someone's going to draft him. I'm really going to draft him within, maybe late day 2, for sure, early day 3. And I think someone's going to say, you know what, I can work with this. I can take this because he's got all the physical tools you want for a quarterback, NFL type quarterback. And then they're just going to try and work with him. And in terms of off the field, his dedication to the craft is from, I've heard from Jimbo, from the coaching staff at A&M with Jimbo Fisher, and from previous coaching staffs. This kid, he memorizes quickly. He's into the playbook. He's a film junkie. It's not like he's got a problem, studying the game. He loves that part of the game. It's just, getting it consistent. And I think a coaching staff is going to take a chance on him, or a high in this draft. So Jamie Newman, I think Neil and I kind of touched on it real quick. He's a guy that took a year off last year. He too has the physical skill sets, I believe, to succeed in the NFL. But he looked rusty. He looked like a kid that took a year off and didn't play. And you could tell, we talked about how Mac Jones looked comfortable in the Carolina Panthers offense, and he kind of picked it up within 2.5 days. I mean, it looked like Newman still didn't know the plays. I mean, he still looked like he was a little confused. And there was a session in Thursday's practice where Newman called a play. Matt Rule said, wait, he asked the coaching staff what the play was. And the coaching staff said, no, that's not the play. So he called him back into the huddle because he had taken that call from the coach, Newman, and flipped it around. So Matt Rule caught him and brought him back, and they huddled the whole group again, all that stuff. So, a lot of ups and downs. I mean, in terms of, Ian Gold, it's Book. Sorry, Ian Book. He's
gold. He's going
off the helmet there, the golden helmet. The kid's a great athlete. There's a lot of times you saw him. I feel like pressure kind of got to him. His first thing he does is he tucks the ball and he runs because he's an athlete. He's used to using his legs and getting out of there. And I just think for him, he's got a long ways to go. You want to bring him in. You want to make him, possibly like a backup quarterback. I can see that happening, but I'm still not sold on him being an NFL ready quarterback. So we talked about Newman, we talked about Mund, we talked about Ellinger, Book, and who was the
Felipe Franks.
Felipe Franks. That guy. For me, he wouldn't be draftable.
Really?
Yeah. He's got the size, the arm strength, but shoulders above his head. I don't want to touch that kid.
Oh. All right, Neil, give us your opinion on these quarterbacks.
I'm not going to be as hard on Felipe. I actually gave him a little bit of credit for coming out, competing, and really actually doing a good job in the second half, moving the ball down the field, completing some good throws, showing off the arm. I think the kid's making his case. I think he's been a steady rise through the 2020 season. Coming into the 2020 season, honestly, boys, I thought that kid was undraftable from that point on, going forward. I think he had a really solid year. He finished yesterday with some really solid numbers: 9 of 16, 122 yards, touchdown. I think he's a late pick projection, and by late pick I mean 7th round probably projection. A guy you take a flyer on. Incredible size. He's 6'6". He's 230 plus. He's got all the length measurables in the world. I posted all those out yesterday. He's got a chance, and his pro day. He's one of those guys that heads into his pro day, I think, with some really positive momentum. And if he could put together a really squeaky clean, sharp pro day, I think he's going to go ahead and get drafted, probably in the 7th round. The other kid, obviously, that's going into, a pro day with a ton of momentum is Kellen Mund. Obviously, he won the MVP yesterday, finished 173 yards passing, looked really sharp in the second half after a really mundane first half. And like Danny said, a microcosm of his career. Really, honestly, it was a microcosm of his career. He was up and he was down, he was left, he was right, blue and black. You can't really put your finger on him too much. But I think once he gets to the point where he's in an NFL, a quarterback room, getting, professional coaching, and everything else from college life goes out the window, and he's able to focus on his craft 100%, I think that kid's probably going to blossom. I had him, I think I posted yesterday, I had him, coming into today as my number 8 quarterback. He was actually my number 9 quarterback, and he advanced 1 spot on my board. He's my number 8 guy right now. I'm projecting him in the 4th round. I think, I agree with Daniel a little bit where I could potentially see him getting overdrafted into day 2. I could see a late 3rd round pick there with Kellen Mund, but he really won me over to a certain extent yesterday, where I just sort of forgot about all the negative stuff that I always would say about him, throughout the course of the year, throughout the course of his career. And, he really made me smile yesterday. You talk about Ian Book. Ian Book is what he is. In a lot of ways, he's like Kellen Mund. He's consistently inconsistent. He didn't spray the ball over the field yesterday, but that's not the kind of quarterback he is. Somebody called him Joe Montana during the broadcast yesterday. That made me want to punch my fist through a wall. Joe Montana is the best quarterback in the history of the game, not named Tom Brady, boys. He's not Joe Montana, but honestly, you got to give him credit though. He's won a lot of football games in that gold and blue, and so as far as that goes, he's. And again, I got it from a scout back in August. Like, the kid's going to get drafted based solely on his play history, and he had a better year than he has had historically in his career in terms of consistency and winning ball games. And he's really smart. He's athletic. He's got it from the shoulders up. He's going to get drafted. He's probably going to kick around the league for a little bit as a career backup. I had a really good text conversation with my dad yesterday. He was like, "What do you think about Ian Book?" I said, "Well, he's probably going to end up being a career backup for probably 5 years." He's like, yeah, kind of like Ron Paulus, right? Like, Ron Paulus couldn't be a career backup for the Arena League, right? Ron Paulus is terrible. Ian Book at least has something as far as Notre Dame guys go. Ellinger, very solid first quarter, right? Again, Danny said that too, and I 100% agree. I wish I saw more of him. I really honestly thought he was going to be put in the fourth quarter, but they put Felipe Franks in. I thought to myself, there's going to be two things that are going to happen. They're either going to put Ellinger in the game to seal the deal, or they're going to put Felipe in because people want to see more Felipe, and they ended up doing that to help Felipe out. So, Felipe got to play, but Ellinger had a really solid, first quarter. His first like 2 or 3 drives, he was pretty sharp. That one play where he was scrambling under like serious duress of pressure, and he tried to flip that ball out over the DB into the bucket, and it was just past the reach. I forget who it was. Was it Amari? I couldn't remember who it was, but that would have been a hell of a highlight play had the receiver not gotten held and interfered with. So I mean, he would have had like a serious highlight play yesterday, but Dan, not that makes or breaks what he did yesterday, but I thought he did a really good job, and he pretty much showed who he is yesterday too. I mean, he's a pretty consistent player, and he's got all the intangibles, and he's got some athletic ability, and I think the thing that he doesn't have is NFL arm strength. But he can place the ball, and he can be really smart with the football. He's got pre-post snap stuff. I think that he's probably going to end up going somewhere in 3 or 4. And that's really like after watching yesterday and really kind of processing a little bit where I think he's going to go. We talked about Mac Jones at length. He had a great week. Who am I missing? Did I not touch on somebody? I feel like I didn't touch. Oh, yeah, Jamie Newman, of course. I mean, how many times do I have to talk about how ridiculous it was that he sat this year out? He looked like a kid that should not have sat the year. He looked like, he was either incredibly rusty or just wasn't ready to go. You need consistency at this position. You need to be constantly competing in the huddle day after day after day. And, he just looked like he didn't really do too much while he was just sitting around and waiting for, senior day to come, waiting for draft day to come, waiting for his time to declare, waiting for pro day, whatever it was that he was waiting for. It didn't really look like he did a whole lot. And so I'm really disappointed in that. I was, from the very beginning, I said, if I was his advisor, if I was his dad, his coach, his uncle, his, agent that he's not paying, quote unquote, I would tell him to go back to school. If I was his pro liaison, I'd tell him to come back for one more year, because you need to show that you can do it at a big time level. I mean, I know he put up a bunch of decent tape at Wake Forest. He had a couple nice players around him. The Sorakia kid, made him look really good a lot of times. Mm-hmm. But I would have loved to see him go ahead and do it at Georgia, because that showed that he could do it in 2 different places, and it makes his case even more. He pounds the table even more as far as making his case. And now he's going into his pro day with a bunch of negative momentum, a lot of ho-hum thoughts and feelings. I think he's got to have a really squeaky clean pro day and really rely on what he what he did at Wake Forest, which is already 2 years ago, in order to build on top of any sort of momentum that he could build for himself when it comes down to getting to the end of April and draft day.
Yeah, on the broadcast, they mentioned that he told the broadcasters that every single 32 teams asked him why he decided to opt out.
As they should.
And that's how we talked about this, from our first show. We talked about quarterbacks. Is everyone's going to want to find out, because there's rumors about he don't want competition, and once they brought in JT Daniels at Georgia, he's like, no, screw this, I'm going to leave. But he said that was a family decision, blah blah blah. Which we'll give him the benefit of the doubt there. However, he just looked like a guy who just wasn't prepared. I mean, and it just took some time for him to go ahead and learn that system, learn that offense. So if you're a guy, I agree with you, Neil. If he came back next year to Georgia and played a full year, I mean, you're looking at right now, we're you and I are kind of differing on him. I think I see him as my third round guy prior to this game, prior to this week, mainly because of the skill set and what he put on tape at Wake Forest. But, depending on how the interviews go and all that stuff, I mean, I could see him now going in the 4th round, early day 3, probably even mid day 3, depending on, which team. But someone's going to draft him because they like his skill set. But if he comes back to Georgia and he puts on some good tape, I mean, you're going from a day 3 pick to a day 1 pick possibly. So that's a lot. For me, I agree with you. I think he should have come back another year and put better tape on and gone into next year's draft and hopefully, up this stock big time. Just going real back to Felipe Franks, he's going to get drafted. I mean, he's got the body, the arm, the skill set to be an NFL quarterback. Someone's going to take a chance on him. Like I said, late day 3. However, for me, at Florida, he showed immaturity issues off the field, and sometimes even on the field. And for me, the way he processes the game is just way too slow. And I think at the next level, he's just not going to be able to do it. Physically, he can play in the NFL level. I just don't think he can process at NFL level.
let me take it back to Jamie Newman, and that is the scuttlebutt heavily going on now between these draft pundits, professional draft pundits, is that Newman has dropped to a day 3 draft quality candidate because of his play. But you look at what he does when he does good things. Look at the strength that he's got here. The ball, he just shoots it. Those mechanics look good. Now, he was sacked 4 times. He was out of sorts in many ways, but at the end of the game, he had good stats, 10 out of 14, 1 touchdown pass, and that to me shows promise, and that to me almost shows like a Dak Prescott type of promise, potential. I don't think you can bypass a guy who is so big, who has such a strong arm, who has done things that you look at on tape, like I just showed, and say, holy cow, this is pretty good. So I don't see him dropping to the day 3, not with so many quarterbacks, so many teams in need of a quarterback. To me, if Jamie Newman is still on the board for the Chicago Bears in round 3, I am seriously considering him. And that, of course, depends on what the Bears do in round 1 and round 2 and what they do in free agency. Am I nuts to feel that way?
But Dak Prescott won the 4th round anyway. So, I mean, we're talking about the same kind of, area here in terms of the draft, 4th, 3rd, 4th round possibly for Jamie Newman. So if that's your comp, then that's a perfect comp because that's the same area we see him going.
Now, let's not forget, Dak Prescott also came in the 4th quarter and dominated, won the Senior Bowl a handful of years ago, too. Mm-hmm. Jamie Newman didn't exactly come out guns blazing and dominate a Senior Bowl. So, I mean, honestly, I had going into this, him being a 4th round guy. I'm sort of dropping him a little bit, leaning towards, 5th round now, like mid day 3 is where I'm sort of leaning at this point because again, I hate the decision. And he didn't look like he was prepared. He didn't look like he was ready to play. He didn't look, game ready and smooth, and he didn't look like a quarterback that was ready to go. So I've got some negative momentum on him right now, but he's got a chance to go ahead and make that better. He's got to have a great pro day, and those interviews from here going forward have to be on point.
What's going to hurt him is there is no combine this year. There is no, another opportunity for him to go ahead and sit down and talk to these guys. Now that there's going to be a pro day, obviously, and he'll be able to do that. I'm assuming he's going to be at Wake Forest's pro day. He wore the Wake Forest helmet during the Senior Bowl week, so I'm assuming he's going to be there. But no combine hurts players like Jamie Newman. Another reason why he probably should have come back and played another year at Georgia. He's going to be at Wake Forest because you have to be at your school for a full year and or play. And he hasn't done either. So he's going to be at Wake Forest, performing at that pro day there. And that's really what, that's really where he's going to represent.
I was going to suggest that he go to both pro days because he needs a lot to prove. But
the NFL is not going to let that happen.
No, we'll be watching that Wake Forest pro day with anxious eyes. Now, I wanted to talk about Sam Ellinger because, again, I am hearing Sam Ellinger has dropped from a day 2 to a day 3 because of his performance throughout the practice week and his performance at the game. I see it differently. And in fact, I think Berlissimo said that he the 3 quarterbacks he listed, I can't find his quote right now if he wants to repost it, that he thought Sam Ellinger was number 1 quarterback. And I almost agree. Look at his first series here. He makes this beautiful throw that the receiver drops, a back shoulder throw. The Fitzpatrick dropped that, and Fitzpatrick dropped a couple of other passes. Now, Fitzpatrick on that one makes a beautiful catch and gets both feet in bounds. And then Sam Ellinger on this play action pass, steps out of the pocket, makes a beautiful throw just outside the reach of Felton. I think Felton should have caught that ball. And then on the next play, watch our man Ellinger. He makes a beautiful dart of a throw. And part of his problem has been that sometimes he throws a ball that dies because the mechanics aren't quite there. There's another drop pass. That one by Fitzpatrick. This drive, he could have easily completed 90% of the passes there on this drive. Mm-hmm. And instead, the stat line looks 4 for 10. It's not an accurate reflection of Sam Ellinger. Sam Ellinger played much better than the stats showed, and you can't go by the stats. It's like Draft Dr. Phil says, the tape never lies, although I do think sometimes it lies a little bit. But in my opinion, the tape didn't lie there. This guy has the tools. He just has to really work on his mechanics so he doesn't throw those dying ducks and he improves his accuracy. Danny, I know you love the guy, so comment first.
Yeah, you're not getting an argument for me. I love this kid, and I think opposite. I think he cemented his stock, whether it's second round or like Neil says, third round. I think he's going. I think he's going in the second round personally, and I think we saw that. And what cemented that for me was the fact that they took him out after the first quarter and then put him back in the game again. I think that was from coaching staffs, whether it's the one he was playing for or from the other scouts or whatnot, saying, you know what, we're good. Let's not put him out there. We know where he's at. We have his grade. And I think that's where he's going. I think he's going somewhere, obviously somewhere in day 2, but I think second round, Neil thinks third round. So I think, again, he's a guy that's going to win coaching staffs over with his moxie, his preparation, his love for the game, his ability to go ahead and remember a playbook and recite those plays quickly in the huddle. So like I said, for me, my biggest concern with him was what was his actual size. He came in about 6'1.5" or so. Now the only thing is he's got to just prove the ability to get those downfield throws, pushing it down the field and getting it in accurate spots, getting it, letting his receiver be able to make the catch on the run. So for me, like I said, if the Bears end up with Ellinger in the second round and offensive tackle in the first round, I'm happy.
Neil, your thoughts on Ellinger, and then we'll move on to other positions.
Yeah, like I said, guys, I thought Ellinger had a really solid first quarter, and you can't look at stats. That's a perfect example of why you can't be stat dependent. I worked for a guy once that said stats are for losers. If you rely too much on stats, like you're not looking at the real picture. That ball that I was talking about earlier, where he was dropping in the bucket, the kid that got interfered with while Ellinger was under duress. That was that ball to Felton right there. That would have been unbelievable, completion. Right. Highlight reel play. Just showing his ability to place balls, accuracy, touch, all those types of things. And again, I don't think he has that elite arm strength, but a lot of times you don't need elite arm strength. Tom Brady doesn't have elite arm strength, but he places the ball. He knows where he's going with it. He can manipulate defenses. He's intelligent. Pre-snap, post-snap, all the things. So I think Ellinger's got a great. He's still got a great chance to potentially go second round. I personally think he's a third round guy, but we're talking about the same thing. He's a day 2 kid, right? It's just a matter of where in day 2 he goes. But I think he's firmly a day 2 kid, and somebody's going to be really happy they got him. There
you go. All right, I think that puts a bow on that. Let me look at my notes here. Any other quarterback that I wanted to talk about? Yeah, again, Kellen Mund, I thought, I was impressed with the fact that he came through in that third quarter, fourth quarter, and put together those 2 touchdown passes, because his first half did not look impressive. Now, a lot of that, too, had to do with offensive line play. Out of the Senior Bowls that I've gone to, I think the majority of them, it seems like the offensive line always gets off to a slow start. They have a tough time kind of getting adjusted, and Mond and other quarterbacks paid the price for that. But once Mond settled in, I was impressed. And, again, boy, I wish he was at the combine and we can get a closer look at him. But that's up to you guys to really delve back into the tape and make more accurate assessments of what he is capable of doing in the NFL.
Well, Aldo, that's one of the things I put out there yesterday, too, is that, part of the reason why Newman and Mond had such a, kind of like blah first half is because that offensive line was Swiss cheese.
Yeah.
They weren't playing the real guys. And one of the guys that started the entire game, arrived 35 seconds before game time.
That's right.
So they're playing with basically a bunch of career backups or free agent signings on draft weekend Sunday is what they're playing with. Guys that aren't going to have a shot to have any longevity in the league whatsoever. And so the ability for actually Kellen Mond to go ahead and have the third quarter that he did is a testament to how talented that kid actually is.
There you go. All right, Aaron Current says that he thought the Ellinger in the second round. He's not believing in that, but I don't know. I think that there's still a chance on that, but you never know. A lot of it has to do with how the board plays out for certain teams. It's everybody talks about best player available, but it's also best player available / position needs, and so a guy who is second round quality caliber player could drop to the third, fourth round because of the way the board plays out. And that's Ryan Pace's excuse for never drafting a quarterback in the middle rounds. All right, let's talk about the wide receiver play in this game. I'll pull up the stats. Des Fitzpatrick had 6 catches, 90 yards. Shi Smith, 3 catches, 57 yards, and on it goes. I'll start with you, Neil. Which one of these wide receivers from the game and the tape that you saw during practice week really stood out for you? Because that is, of course, an area of need for the Chicago Bears.
Well, I mean, obviously, Dez had a incredible day yesterday. The kid from Louisville, he had an incredible day. Lots of production, ran great routes, competitive. He made a difference, and I think his draft stock. I don't know specifically where it was, before the game. I didn't necessarily have my draft board of wide receivers, completed before kickoff yesterday. But I can imagine that wherever he was, he definitely shot up the board. Demetric Felton all week from UCLA did a phenomenal job transitioning from running back to wide receiver and actually looking like one. Right, he had an incredible week. He's a perfect slot, I think, a utility guy for anybody that needs that kind of player moving forward. Dwayne Eskridge from Western Michigan really, made himself known this week, put his stamp on the week, showed off a ton of speed, and he's probably a guy that's going to run somewhere in the 4.3s for his pro day. Amari Rogers, I mean, we've seen that kid plenty of times, on a really highly productive, national championship, type ball club. I don't think you really have to, do a whole lot of film study on him, but still, I mean, as a guy that, probably didn't necessarily have to put in all the reps yesterday or all the reps during the week, I think he still, went ahead and put forth the best effort he could and show that he's a kid that loves to compete. Marquez Stevenson I touched on yesterday. That kid, when he was, 16 years old, came to our camp down there in Starkville and blazed a 4.43. That kid's been fast for life, and somebody's going to really love that. The Sage Surratt kid, like I said, when I was talking about Jamie Newman earlier, he made Jamie Newman look really good a lot of times when they both were at Wake Forest together. Sage Surratt and his brother Chaz, those two kids were out of a small town in North Carolina, big time two sport players, basketball players, football players, and Sage Surratt actually jumped on the scene while his older brother was getting recruited. And his older brother was a starting quarterback. Sage was a wide receiver, DB type kid. They both played hoops, big time hoops programs, down there at their respective schools. But you hear about Chaz, and you hear that he has a younger brother. You take a look at the younger brother, and he shows a lot of potential, extremely high ceiling at a really young age, and he's done nothing but elevate. So he's always been somebody that's really intrigued me. I just wish I could have seen him play yesterday, but he had a really good week. Cade Johnson made some incredible catches. And really, solidified himself as a quality take, probably somewhere on day 3 if he doesn't sneak up into day 2. And really, I mean, talking to a couple scouts, I think it was a borderline consensus opinion that Kadarius Toney was arguably the best kid in Mobile, and not that we really needed a full week of practice at Senior Bowl to know that. I think he's put down plenty of ridiculous tape this year, but I think Kadarius Toney really established himself as a dude, and he might go ahead and he might have gone ahead and made himself a first-round pick after this week.
Yeah, in terms of me for the game specifically, I mean, Des Fitzpatrick was a guy. He showed the size, the ability to be able to go up and get the ball over defensive back. I think we showed that highlight earlier where he's going up and catching the ball literally off the defender's helmet. So he showed the hands there, the body control. We showed him running some of those quick out routes. So I think he's got the quickness to be able to line up in the slot and be effective in there as well. So for me, he's a guy that really shined throughout the whole week and then just put it all together here with the game as well. Another kid that had a really good week, and I think kind of quietly, was Josh Palmer from Tennessee. I don't know if you have any background on him, but this is a kid that caught my eye in the practices, and what I think he had a touchdown in the game as well. So what with him is he's quick off the line of scrimmage. If you're trying to press him, and I mean his ability to be able to break that press and get clean off the line of scrimmage into his route is very, very impressive. And then he shows this exhilaration, this burst to be able to, once he's in phase with a corner, if he needs to, put in that second gear, he's got it. He needs to be able to go up top and create some separation as well. So Josh Palmer and Des Fitzpatrick, to me, had, really shined in the game yesterday. In terms of the whole week, I think Neil and I are pretty much locking up on a lot of these receivers. Kadarius Toney for me and Eskridge were two guys that I specifically asked Jim Nagy about prior to the Senior Bowl when we had him on a couple weeks ago, because these are the guys that I'm looking at in terms of, wanting to get onto the Bears offense. Because, for a couple of years now, I've been saying we need to get some speed, some playmakers on offense, guys that can do some quick hitting plays, whether it's on a jet sweep handoff or it's a bubble or slip screen, get the ball in their hands, get them in the open field and go ahead and make plays. So for me, Kadarius Toney, yeah, I mean, he had an up and down week in terms of practice, but the talent's there. I mean, you saw the kid's ability to compete, the ability to go up and make a play over defenders. So I think Kadarius Toney was probably the best receiver in overall in this draft class. Marquez Stevenson, I agree. Another guy that shows good burst, good acceleration, a guy that could probably line up in the slot, but also a guy who can go outside, give you some speed to be able to hit the home run ability. Austin Watkins Jr., the kid from UAB, 6'1", 207 pounds, almost 32-inch arms. This guy's got strong hands. He's a little twitched up for a receiver. And I think I like his size, and I think his quickness is short area quickness. I can line him up in the slot, and with that size at 6'1", I think that could be a weapon if you groom him and develop him later on in his career. So he's a guy that stood out for me in the week. Shi Smith, we talked about him, the kid from South Carolina, perfect slot receiver. Kay Johnson, the same thing. Going to the other team, let's see who else I got here. Those are pretty much the receivers that I've highlighted, for both in the game and during the week.
I gotta give a shout out to Shi Smith too from South Carolina. That kid also had a really good game yesterday, and I think he's really elevated his stock as well. You mentioned Josh Palmer, Danny. He's got an interesting story, not in the sense that he's got a background or he's got baggage or anything like that, but in terms of a kid that wasn't really recruited and really had to develop and elevate and put in the work and everything else. Probably, I think he was like a 3-star kid out of STA down there at Fort Lauderdale. And I mean, everybody in STA gets recruited, right? Everybody in STA gets offers. St. Thomas Aquinas, for guys that don't know, St. Thomas Aquinas High School in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Everybody there gets offers. It's one of those schools that, I mean, literally, like everybody's
players.
Yeah, I mean, it's every Tom, Dick, and Harry goes in that school too. Everybody and their mom goes into that school. You have to. It's kind of like IMG. Everybody goes into that school because you have to, and everybody gets offered because they have to, because you have to offer them, or else, if it ends up being down the road, the kid thinks, well, you didn't offer me back in March. I'm not sure if I really want to go to a place that didn't want me to begin with. It's one of those things. But he was a 3-star kid. He didn't get offered by the Notre Dames, the Alabamas, the Texas, the USCs, all those guys. He had a bunch of probably like mid-level FBS offers, but he came into Tennessee as a 3-star kid with not a whole lot of smoke and flames and everything else, hyperbole behind him. But I mean, he really did a good job of establishing himself as a guy.
Steven asked a question about there were so many receivers at the Senior Bowl that were 6 feet or under. Is that where the game is going, in your opinion, where smaller receivers are the norm? And we saw that for a spell in the NFL, really, like during I think it was the Dan Marino era. There was just a ton of wide receivers who were short, and then all of a sudden, these tall Megatron type receivers are out there. And I'm just taking a look at CBS's board of top wide receivers. There are a lot of big, tall receivers that are going to be available in this draft. There's Devontae Smith. He's 6'1", although some people argue that. I think Rashard Bateman from Minnesota, 6'2". Justin Ross from Clemson, 6'4". Amon Ross St. Brown, 6'1". Terrence Marshall Jr. from LSU, 6'3". Tamarian Terry, 6'4". So there's a lot of tall wide receivers that just weren't just out of chance that they didn't make it to the Senior Bowl because they're either underclassmen or for whatever reason. But you guys see there is a nice kind of blend of small, quick, fast, slot-like receivers who can also play the outside and the big, tall guys as well, correct?
Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, just look at the Super Bowl defending Super Bowl champions, the Kansas City Chiefs. Is this a copycat league? They got the guys like Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins, not really big guys, but these are guys, DeMarcus Robinson. These are guys that are quick, shifty guys. You can get the ball to, like I said, slip screens, bubble screens, jet sweep handoffs, and just get the ball in the hands and let them do their thing in the open field. So I think, you have to obviously have some balance and have some guys with some size. And I think the Bears, in their case, they have the guys, if you retain Allen Robinson, the guys at 6'1", 6'2", you have a big tight end, Cole Kmet. You have potentially Riley Ridley if you let him play. He's a guy 6'1 plus 6'2. So you have those kind of guys. I think what the Bears are missing is just quick jitterbugs, if you will, guys that can get the ball in their hands and make things happen in the open field, especially. Nothing better than, if your running game is not working, throw a quick slip screen to a receiver in the open field, have him make a guy miss and then make a 6, 7, 8 yard 9 gain. That could be as good as a handoff, if your running game is being bogged down by the defense. So, that's what you need to get in right now in today's NFL. Quick hitting plays, guys who got some speed to be able to take top off the defense. Darnell Mooney was a great start last year, but you got to add at least one, possibly two of these kind of guys onto this roster, especially if you're going to keep guys like Robinson around.
Yeah.
Now, how deep is this draft for wide receivers? Because even if the Bears do come to an agreement with Allen Robinson and he returns next year, fortunately, Darnell Mooney looks like a mid-round hit. Anthony Miller, unfortunately, is a huge disappointment. The Javon Wims experiment should come to an end. I was so impressed with him at Bourbonnais with some of the things that he did, but he just hasn't been able to translate that to the wide receiver position and consistently make catches and so forth. The depth on this wide receiver position for the Bears is really bad, but if they're going to concentrate on a quarterback and an offensive line in the first couple of rounds, how deep is this wide receiver class so that we can feel good about targeting a receiver in the 3rd, 4th, or 5th round? What do you guys think?
I mean, for me, it's got nice depth. I mean, we talked about some of the guys you mentioned, Devontae Smith. Jamar Chase is probably for me the best receiver in this class, and a lot of people forget about him, the kid from LSU, because he opted out this season. But this guy's a potential number 1 receiver. Jalen Waddle, the kid from Alabama, is going to be up there. Elijah Moore, the kid from Mississippi, is a good receiver. Terrence Marshall, the big kid from LSU as well. Chris Olave went back to Ohio State, which is a little bit of a shock. I think he was going to be a 1st-round pick, but he's going back. We talked about Kadarius Toney already. But Rondale Moore, the kid from Purdue, is another jitterbug, undersized guy who's got tremendous quickness. You get the ball in his hands. These guys make guys miss in the open field. Nico Collins was in this game, and he had a solid week of practice. Didn't really do much in the game, but he's a guy from Michigan, opted out this past season. But he's a guy also that's got some size, a guy that can go up there. He's got the athletic ability and the body control and the strong hands to be able to go up and make some of those 50-50 catches in the air when the ball's up in the air. So there's a ton of receivers here as well. So especially what the Bears are looking for, they're looking for more of those quick, fast guys. We talk about guys in the later rounds like a Cade Johnson from San Diego State. Kids like that are going to be available. And you can always, we got Darnell Mooney last year in the 5th round. So, some of these guys that are undersized but are quick and fast and shifty is what I think the Bears need on offense. And I think those guys can be had in the 4th, 5th round.
I think the wide receiver position, if you look at where the game of football has gone over the course of the past decade, where you have receivers all over the field, you're always going to have more than enough receivers to be able to fill needs, whether it's at the top of the draft, middle of the draft, bottom of the draft. I think that's never going to be as much of an issue. What I think is going to be an issue is fitting the type of need that you want. And like you said, Danny, what we really need right now is playmakers. Right. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we try and go ahead and focus on getting a wide receiver in the 4th or 5th round. I think that you're going to be able to have receivers to be gotten in those rounds, like quality guys, like you said. And, that's where I think that goes. At the college level, I don't think it's ever going to be an issue where colleges are not going to look for the big receiver. Colleges are always going to look for the 6'4" guy that weighs 205 that can run a 4.4. That's always going to be a thing. And there's always going to be those guys available. They're going to continue to be groomed because that is an absolute weapon, and that is never going away. And if it ever does go away, I'll be the first one to say I was wrong, and I'll be absolutely freaking shocked. And then, to go back to the initial point you made about Devontae Smith, at his rising senior day a year ago, he measured in at 6 foot 172. So to say he's 6'1", that means he hit a growth spurt, which means he's still growing, which is very, very entertaining.
I just asked this question in the chat room. I'll ask it of you guys, and within reason, of course. But if there's a wide receiver that drops to that 20th slot, Bears still have number 20th spot. They've acquired some free agent quarterback. Is there a receiver that you just got to say, whoa, this guy is still available at 20? We have to pick him up. Think of a name right away and share that with us, and we'll see what the chat room comes up with.
If those 5 quarterbacks are gone, then I'm looking at, I'll take one. But if those 5 quarterbacks are still on the board, there's no way I'm passing one of those 5 quarterbacks up. But to throw a name out there, if a guy like Jalen Waddle is out there, someone we're talking about right now, quick, shifty, a guy that take a top off of defense, and 5 quarterbacks are gone and Waddle's still out there. He's coming off that Achilles injury, but he's a guy that we just talked about. Right? Get the ball in his hands in the open field, makes guys miss. That guy's a threat. That guy's a guy that defensive coordinators are going to be like, all right, where is he at? Where's he lined up? Let's make sure we have coverage on that guy. So that's what you need. That's the kind of guy you're missing here on this offense. It's a guy that can consistently scare defenses, defensive backs, and defensive coordinators.
Neil?
Yeah, Waddle, Smith, Chase. I could probably rattle off like 5, 6, or 7, but I honestly think that taking a wide receiver is just a wasting that pick at this point because we have greater needs. Yeah. If a quarterback isn't available at 20, if we somehow fail to go ahead and trade up to get the guy, and we stick at 20, and a quarterback's not available, then you got to take a tackle. Right. And if the right tackle's not available, then I think you got to do something in the trade market and go and get a guy, because I think those are the 2 biggest needs that we have right now is quarterback and tackle, and those are the things that need to be in place and ready to rock and roll by the time we hit May 1st.
The other guy that make me think about it, and it's not a receiver, but he could play a receiver position, is Pitts. Kyle Pitts, a tight end from Florida. If he's out there and all these quarterbacks are gone and he's sitting out there for some reason, he's a guy I think hard and long about, because him and Cole Kmet, you line him up at the U position as a move tight end, you line Kmet at the OY, your opportunities on offense are immense there. But again, for me, it's got to be quarterback 1. Neil hit it, offensive line 2. But if there's a playmaker like a Kadarius Toney, Jalen Waddle or a Kyle Pitts, I think about it hard if my quarterbacks are gone.
All right. One of the disappointing things that happened at the Senior Bowl is that we did not get a good display of the running backs there, or maybe we did. And the Senior Bowl running backs were not very impressive, other than Michael Carter, who just was sensational. He had the longest run of the day. Carter, you could see it here on our replay package, courtesy of the NFL Network. Thank you. They make these available on their YouTube channel. Michael Carter had the longest run of the day and also scored this touchdown where he displayed great power and also got a little help from his friends, pushing him inside the 5 into the end zone. But outside of Michael Carter, did anybody else grab your eye? And Danny, I'll start with you. Tell me about Carter and any other player that caught your eye in the Senior Bowl.
No, well, I'm looking specifically for the Bears. I'm looking for a running back that's going to be able to come in and complement Montgomery here. And I think Michael Carter would be a perfect complement for Montgomery. He's a guy about 5'7", 5'8". But you talked about it earlier. His contact balance, his power, his vision, his cutback vision, ability to jump in and out of holes. And he's a terrific pass catcher out of the backfield. So I think this guy would be a perfect complement. I just don't think he'll be available in the later rounds where the Bears could possibly look at a running back. But I think he'll be a nice addition to any team, especially for a compliment on the Bears for Montgomery. But other guys, Elijah Mitchell from Louisiana kind of stuck out in the passing game. Roundtree, a bigger back, but more of a similarity to Montgomery. Also, made some plays as well. But yeah, I mean, in terms of running back, that's low on my priority. So I wasn't really looking for a running back specifically. Now, Felton came in as a running back, listed as a running back, but I think he's going to probably be playing more of a receiver / running back role. So if you consider him a running back, yeah, that's another kid to get from UCLA that I'd like to consider. But just in terms of a specific running back, Michael Carter from North Carolina was a guy that really impressed me at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, Carter, I mean, you look at the kid, he's stout, he's strong, he's powerful, he's fast, he's physical, he runs with aggression. I put it out yesterday, like, who doesn't want that, right? I mean, as far as compliments to what we have already, he's going to come in and we're going to have a really dangerous running attack if we ever decide we want to use it. Outside of that, like, the best players didn't play. Trey Sermon didn't play, and I don't remember seeing Chris Evans playing, and Najee Harris didn't play, and so, I mean, really the other guys that were there, the Herbert kid is interesting. I think he's probably a later on down the road guy. Yeah. Elijah Mitchell, I put out yesterday, dark horse alert. I love that kid in high school. I love that kid in college. I think he's got a wide variety of tools that is going to make him dangerous at the next level, even though he didn't really produce yesterday. But I mean, if you watch any Louisiana football games or any coaches tape at all, I mean, you see that kid is a dangerous threat in that backfield. And they have a two-headed, deal down there in Louisiana with the other kid that they have. So, Kellen Hill is, Stephen, popped up Kellen Hill. Kellen Hill is.
Tell us about him, Kellen Hill.
He's
I like him. He's talented. He's
100% talented. He's a kid that's just like Michael in the sense that he runs with aggression. He's powerful. He's a kid. He's rather run your ass over than run around you. He's got 2 of the 3 prongs of being a top level running back down, being a really productive kid on the ground, running over people, being physical, seeing the hole, hitting it hard, everything that you want, a ground demon to do. And then he's also really, really good out of the backfield. The kid played wide receiver in high school. All right. And not that he played that full time, but he has experience playing wide receiver. So as far as using his hands, coming out of the backfield, catching the ball, looking upfield, turning from a catcher into a runner immediately and getting those yak yards, he's a really productive kid. And if you look back to his previous couple years, he was really kind of like the balls of that offense when it comes down to it. They couldn't pass the ball down there in Starkville. And Kellen Hill was really the one that catalyzed any sort of offensive production down there. He came into Mississippi State needing to win that position, and he did. He took the position away from Harrison Williams, who was a 1,000-yard rusher the year before. And, so Kellen Hill, he sat out this year. He played the first game, then opted out, sat out the rest of the year. Another one of those guys that says it was a family decision and all that. I think he's another dude, kind of like Jamie Newman, that's going to have to answer in a very truthful, grown-up manner why he did that. Because he's already got the stigma of being very immature and inability to be emotionally sound and composed. So I think what this year could have done for Kellen Hill if he went ahead and continued to play was show that he can kind of rein in all those emotions that he likes to wear on his sleeve and be a better teammate, be composed, be a grown up. Essentially, is what we're talking about, because it's not like one of those things where you only see in the stadium. They show it on TV. There's nothing hidden anymore. Like when you wear things on your sleeve like that, it's easy to be seen. That's one of the things that I think that if he stuck around and played this year, he would be able to show if he was able to just kind of keep everything together. But as far as the talent goes, I mean, it's no brainer. He's got first round talent. It's just a matter of from an emotional maturity standpoint where he is.
Yeah, I think Kellen Hill is I mean, I thought he was second round talent for sure, possibly first round. But the kid's talented as all heck. But yeah, some of the off field immaturity questions. I was some media person reached out to me and he's doing a mock draft for the team he covers. And he's like, give me a 6th round running back. And I said, Kellen Hill. He's like, 6th round for Kellen Hill. I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of questions off the field. Unfortunately, I think he'll be available in the 6th round. And if you get a kid like that in the 6th round, take a flyer on him. That's a talented chance you're taking on a really good kid there. So there's like Rakeem Boyd from Arkansas as well. I think also be a nice fit somewhere. He's a guy that more of a thumper, not as elusive as Carter or Hill, the guys we're talking about in the open field, but another, there's some depth, and you can always find running backs. Aldo, my theory, I will never draft a running back in the 1st round. I'm always going to find running backs in the later rounds. So, our last couple of running backs, Montgomery was a 3rd round pick. Before that, Jordan Howard was a 5th round pick. Those are the areas in which I concentrate looking for my running backs.
6th round pick for Kellen Hill is going to be a steal.
Oh, big time. Yeah. If he's there. I was just throwing it out there.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let's turn our attention to that tight end position. I thought all week long we saw some intriguing tight end candidates that could be brought in for the Chicago Bears to complement what we have in Cole Kmet. What do you guys think about the tight ends from the Senior Bowl class? Let me start with Neil. Neil Stopchinski.
I think Kenny Yebo is the one that really intrigues me the most outside of the kid from Boston College, Hudson. Yeboah, came in with all the measurables as well as a kid that didn't really produce a whole lot during his college career, but had a really nice, 2020 season. And I think he's one of those kids that could easily, pick up a ton of momentum after, coming off of this game. I mean, he had that beautiful, like acrobatic, flipping, around 5 times catch, in the end zone, scoring right there, from, Felipe. And again, I mentioned about Felipe yesterday. He placed that ball. That was a hell of a throw. Yeboah went up and made a hell of a catch and came down and somehow managed to get the nose over the end zone, over the goal line, before an elbow or knee came down, or at least that what the officials saw, which that was questionable yesterday, the officiating. But that's
it was bad.
I was kind of like, hey guys, put the whistles away, man. Just all the offensive pass interference calls and like, come on, man, it's an all-star game. Let the guys play.
Exactly.
What are we doing? But yeah, Kenny Yeboah and the Boston College kid, the kid from Boise,
John Bates.
My man's name Bates. Yeah, John Bates. Bates Motel over here had a really interesting week. And he's not going to run anywhere even remotely close to anything that's going to be considered impressive. But he showed good hands, and he looks like a big tough kid. I think he's going to have an interesting next couple of months here as far as like pro days and all the talk surrounding him goes. I mean, outside of that, I mean, I wasn't too fired up on anybody. Like Noah Gray, I think did some interesting stuff this week in practice. Obviously, didn't really show up yesterday in the game. The kid from SMU got some playing time yesterday. Didn't really see anything out of him. I'm not really sure. Colin Granson, the kid out of SMU, is who I was thinking of. Trey McKinney, actually. Trey McKinney is another guy that had a lot of smoke and a lot of fanfare around his recruiting process out of high school, and going to I think FSU and then transferring to Georgia. And he's a guy that's got tons of length and tons of athletic ability, and he's really, really intriguing as far as a guy that's a mismatch nightmare. And so, I mean, as far as his next couple months is concerned, going into the draft, I see him having garnered a ton of momentum going forward, and he could really rise.
Yes, for me, I mean, Long, the kid from Boston College, was a guy that was probably the highest ranked kid here at the Senior Bowl, but he looked like he was just going through the motions. I mean, he was a guy that just really didn't do much, to stick out in terms of the week-long practices, and I didn't even think he played in the game. I didn't even see him play in the game at all. But in terms of guys specifically, I got a couple guys that Neil already touched on. One guy from the American team, or actually from the national team, is John Bates, kid from Boise State. This is a guy that I'm going to go back and do some more. I've highlighted him as I'm going back and do some more research on. But 6'5", 260 pounds, 32-inch arms. And this is a guy that only played 3 games last season, but for his career has got 47 receptions, 529 yards, and only 2 touchdowns. So the production hasn't really been there with Boise State. That's why I want to come back and watch his film. Is it more so the lack of the offense? Is it the quarterback play? Whatnot? But he's a guy that really showed out this week, and he's a guy that I think you can line up in line and also as the move tight end, flank him out in the slot. The guy showed the ability to be able to, extend away from his body. He's a natural hands catcher. Guy can, is tough, makes catches through contact. So he's definitely a guy. He's got good size we talked about earlier. So he's a guy that really intrigued me. He's a guy that's on my radar. Day 3 pick, in my opinion. And Trey McKinney is a kid, another one that touched on. 6'4", 247 pounds, 32-inch plus arms, 11-inch hands. So he's got those big hands. Another natural hands catcher. A guy only had 6 receptions last year at Georgia, transfer from Florida State. So this is a guy that obviously these big-time programs want him in, there and playing. So he just looked like a natural mover, man. He's a guy that looks athletic as hell. He looks all twitched up. You can see him stretching down the seam as a guy that's got some speed to him. Probably I'd say in the 4.6 range, more maybe. I don't think he's faster than that. But again, a natural hands catcher, a guy that can move freely, a guy that can stretch that zone for you and give you another option. Like I said, with the whole Jimmy Graham thing, with his contract, you're gonna need another tight end bring in for sure. If you get either one of these guys on day 3 with a McKinney or a Bates, I think those are solid pickups as well.
All right, and where did I see this? Oh, there it is. Berlissimo is saying, "Come on, give me some Trey McKinney love."
We just did. Both of us gave him both.
That's all too.
All kinds of Trey McKinney love. You gotta love long, athletic, and mismatch nightmare. I mean, you can't go wrong with that. If he runs anywhere, 4.6 or better, I mean, he's not gonna run a 4.4 with 4.6. 6. What do we say?
He's 6'4", 247. Yeah, I mean,
6'4", 247 and 4.6. I mean, come on, man. That's
McKinney popped all week. I mean, every time there's a couple of throws, especially with Mac Jones. I mean, he's hitting him in stride. There's a throw that was highlighted over and over again with down the seam where it's right to the outside shoulder. He does a nice stretches his arm out, makes a nice hands catch on the move. So yeah, Trey McKinney is a kid that really caught my eye, and I think him and Bates, if one of those guys are available day 2, and you got some of those picks you can play with, man. I would love to bring one of those guys in.
Very good. All right, let's turn our attention to the defense, and I'd like to start by getting your thoughts on Cam Sample. He was the leading tackler with 7 tackles. He also had a half of a sack. What do you guys think about Cam Sample? And then we'll also talk about Divine Diablo, who was second in tackles with 6. Riley Cole and Chauncey Golston. Those are the leading tacklers from yesterday's Senior Bowl. Danny, you want to start with Cam Sample?
Yeah, Cam Sample was another kid that we're talking about popping the whole week. I mean, and as the week went on, this is a guy that on one-on-ones, he was unblockable at times. Mm-hmm. My only thing with him is he's about, I think I'm trying to look for his numbers here. He's about 6'2", 6'3", 270 pounds, I want to say. But he, for me, projects better as an interior defensive tackle, more like in a 4-3 system, right? So I just projecting him as a 5 technique on the Bears could be an issue there in terms of, his frame looks like it could add some more size, but is it enough to be able to handle in terms of as a 5 technique, being able to take on, run blocks and all that stuff. So that's the only issue with him. But in terms of a guy that showed out, the guy that showed production and an ability to rush a passer, especially from the interior of the defensive line, Cam Sample from Tulane really stuck out for me throughout the week and as well as the game as well.
Yeah, we had Cam Sample measure in early in the week at 6'0", 6'2", and 3 quarters, 274, 10-inch hands, big old hands, 32 and a half arms, 81-inch wingspan. Really nice length, really nice size. I think that was the same thing I was thinking yesterday, is really where is his best fit? Where along our defensive line could he really project into? There was a lot of things about him that I loved yesterday. I mentioned in some of my post-game stuff that he was one of my defensive risers. Very solid week of practice, took game day to another level, I thought. 7 tackles yesterday, 5 of which were solo, half sack, half TFL. I think he had an excellent sideline to sideline energy. That kid played his ass off. Right. And so, I mean, you can't you can't really go wrong with guys like that. It's just a matter of how do they fit. And so that's going to be a big thing going forward as far as like his pro day goes. When the Bears get him in front of them, either in the film room or also on the field during his pro day workout, is giving him that really sort of a tailored workout to see if he could fit into the defensive scheme they need him to fit into.
Yeah, because when you look at him, right, you talk about 6'3", 274 pounds. It's like, right, do you put on more weight and get him up to that 285 range without slowing down his quickness and his speed and make him a 5 technique? I mean, he's got, average length, if you will, for that position. Do you take off weight? Do you stand him up on a 2-point stance as a guy off the edge? I'm not sure if that's the right play for him, though. So I think adding on weight, I think his body is not totally maxed out. You could probably put some more weight on him, some good weight, and have him play some of that, Bilal Nichols role, if you will, a guy that can rush upfield, get after the passer. So that's where I was stuck with him as well. So that's why I kind of see him more as a 4-3 interior, 3 technique defensive tackle.
I can see him play on the outside. I really honestly can. I can see him playing maybe a 4-3 defensive end. Maybe strong side, I don't know. But I mean, as unblockable as he was this week at times, he's a guy that I don't necessarily want him to be at the point of contact, exactly, for life. I want him to be in space, to be able to go ahead and beat guys on the outside. That's kind of where I think I'm going to start him and go up or down from there.
There's a couple players too. We'll get to them probably later on, but another couple players I had the same kind of questions about.
I wanted to get Neil's thoughts on Diablo because I saw you tweeted out, you gave him some props, and I've got this replay here that I want to share with you. Look at this interception by Diablo during the course of the season. I mean, he lays out for this one. Pretty impressive what he can do guarding a receiver out of the slot. Neil, your overall impressions on Divine Diablo?
Yeah, I mean, as far as Diablo goes, you talk about a kid that plays safety. He came in at 6'3", almost a half, 6'3 and 3/8, 226 pounds. He looks like Sean Taylor, right? 9.5 hands, 32 and 3/4 arms, 79 and an eighth wingspan. You talk about kids that played their ass off yesterday. Holy hell. I mean, and, he showed that, he can be all over the field. He showed strength. He showed power. He showed athletic ability and quickness and lateral agility. He did a lot of things that opened up a lot of eyes yesterday. I think I didn't really get a chance to watch too many of the DB indie drills during the week. I saw some of the stalk drill from Thursday, really where a couple of his corners stood out. I didn't get a chance to watch too much of the safety. So when I watched him move around yesterday, and then lead the national team with 6 tackles, 5 of which were also solo. Kind of a quietly productive afternoon, to be honest with you. Like he got some love here and there, especially when he threw somebody out of bounds into the water coolers. But I mean, he's a dude that played with a ton of aggressiveness. I mean, you love aggressive safeties. I love aggressive safeties at least. I don't know about you guys. I love aggressive safeties. I love guys that come downhill and knock your skull off.
Absolutely.
Right? So, I mean, that's a dude that really opened my eyes, and I'm going to go back and look at some of these, clips from practice this week and, see what he did in one-on-one drills.
Yeah, Divine Diablo is a guy I have my eye on since the Notre Dame game when Vatek played Notre Dame, and he's a guy that you talked about Adrian Amos replacement. This guy can be it. He's a physical presence. Do you show the highlight of him making an interception? He's got 12. First career, he's got 6 interceptions, 11 pass defense, but his forte is not going to be coverage. His forte is going to be, being that physical presence, a guy, in the middle of the field, come down strong and as a run defender, guy that can, secure tackles and can pound some running backs. So he's a guy, if you're talking about that Adrian Amos replacement, a guy that can pair up with Eddie Jackson, let Eddie Jackson be that free roaming, ball hawking safety, and let this guy be that, permanent, strong safety there. I think this is the Diablo is the kid you can look at.
5 of the 6 tackles that he had at the Senior Bowl were solo tackles. That's pretty impressive. Mm-hmm. Riley Cole and Chauncey Golston, the other 2 players that had 6 tackles. Each of them also had pass breakups, 1 each. Riley Cole, Chauncey Golston, you guys want to comment on any one of those guys?
Riley Cole, the hometown hero, right?
Yep.
You heard the crowd rise up every time he either was on the field or made a play. It was great. It was like a high school game all over again.
Yeah.
Riley Cole, I mean, he's I think he's kind of a scrappy dude. He's another one of those guys I got to do a little bit more homework on, but he definitely made a name for himself yesterday as well. Mm-hmm. What would you say? 6 tackles yesterday? Was it Aldo?
6, correct.
Yeah, 6 tackles yesterday. I mean, hey, that's good for him coming into his home stadium for the last time, putting on a show like that in an All-Star game. Mm-hmm. Cheers to that kid. He's a guy I'm going to do a hell of a lot more homework on going forward.
That's one of the great things about the Senior Bowl is that guys proclaim themselves. They say, hey, do your homework on me. It's like when I went to the Senior Bowl last year, one of the guys that did that was Kindle Vildor. I didn't know Kindle Vildor from Joe Schmo. And I'm walking by and I see this guy is a little shorter than me. He looks like nobody's interviewing him. And I go over, hey, my name is Aldo Gandia, Beers Barham, Kindle Vildor. Oh, I saw your name in the roster. Let's talk. Had a great interview with him. Danny and I went to practice an hour or 2 later, and I really focused on him, shot some video of him playing. And I said, oh, wait a minute. This guy, we need to do some studying on Kindle Vildor. And when we interviewed him a few shows ago here on Draft on Tap, Jim Nagy, the executive director of the Reese's Senior Bowl, who, again, great job, Nagy, on putting on this event. He told us, don't give up on Kindle Vildor. I know we actually talked to him before he got a lot of playing time late in the season. He told us, keep an eye on him. This guy's a playmaker. And so we've got some high expectations for him. Danny, did you want to comment on any of those 2 guys?
Yeah, actually, Golson is a kid I had marked down as a guy that really caught my eye throughout the week, and as well as I can see him being a nice fit with the Bears. And he's a guy that came in at 6'5", 268 pounds. I can add about 12 pounds of muscle on this kid and make him about 280. He's stout. This kid is strong. He plays long with the 33, almost 34-inch arm length. So when he presses the offensive lineman, he jolts him back, gets him back on his heels. And he's a guy that could be a presence up front at the line of scrimmage. So he's a kid that definitely caught my eye, and I can see him projecting nicely into the Bears 5 technique future. At that, if they keep that, I'm assuming they're going to keep that 3-4 defense. Last year he had 45 tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss, and 5.5 sacks last year. So he's not a guy that's got a big stat guy, but definitely a guy that makes his presence felt, a physical presence, like I said, at the line of scrimmage. And I could definitely see him being someone you can bring in the later rounds, and he can be a guy that could be a big part of the rotation.
Excellent. All right. Let's talk about some of the other defensive standouts in yesterday's game. I'll just turn it over to you, Neil. Pick a name and tell me what you thought of that particular player.
Well, yesterday, I remember I was, tweeting out pregame that, watching that stalk drill, the wide receiver DB stalk drill from Thursday. You had the Graham kid from Oregon and I'm blanking, Washington.
Keith Taylor.
Yeah, Taylor.
Keith Taylor.
Graham and Taylor really stuck out. I mean, that's a drill that we talk about. The key to executing that drill is really to make like 3 moves at once. Like recognition, plant, and spike to the ball. And those guys showed incredible explosion in a drill that really is meant to test like how quick you can react to the ball and either stop the receiver or pick that thing off. I think those 2 dudes really stood out and separated themselves from the rest of that cornerback room this week. Other guys I had like a really good week, especially from the safety position. I think we talked about those guys on on a show the other day. You had the Hamlin kid. I think he was on the national team, right? The kid from Pittsburgh.
Damar Hamlin.
Damar Hamlin had a really good week. The Cam Bynum kid from Cal had a really good week. A couple safeties that really showed out. From a DB, side of things, those are the four guys that I think I really, and of course, obviously Diablo, but those are the handful of guys that I came out of the week really, fresh on my brain as, guys that stood out the most.
In terms of the game specifically, the defensive guys that really stuck out was the Oguzua, the defensive tackle from UCLA. I mean, another guy I think is going to be a tailor-made, 3-technique defensive tackle at the next level. The kid is quick off the snap. We talked about Divine Diablo already. KJ Britt, a linebacker from Auburn. We're talking about middle linebacker being a position of need for the Bears. And this is a guy that's instinctive. He's a physical presence. He might not run. He might not be the sideline to sideline guy, but he's a guy that's instinctive. And his run fits are physical at the line of scrimmage. He comes down. He plays with emotion. He had a tip ball on a pass there in the red zone there as well. So KJ Britt really played well for me in this week's game. Keith Taylor had a sensational game. I think he had a sensational week. The kid from Washington that Neil was talking about. He's a press corner, big guy at 6'2". He's got some length and he's got some attitude, man. This is a guy that at some of the plays on the drills where he was being, he didn't like it. He came in and he gave a receiver a thumping there, and some of the receivers didn't take to it too nicely. So a big physical kid. Like I said, instinctive, can find the ball, turns his head, locates nicely. Not that the corners are a real pressing need for the Bears. And I think this guy's going to be long gone in probably round 2, maybe round 3, probably even round 2. I think. But Keith Taylor Jr. was a nice kid from the game. I mean, talk about defense. Talk about Ellerson Smith, the kid from Northern Iowa. The guy had a tremendous game yesterday. He's a guy that got better as the week went on. You saw some of that quickness, the shiftiness, the ability to change direction at the line of scrimmage. Came in about 6'6", 247 pounds. So he's got to probably add some more muscle to him, but definitely a guy that shows some potential in terms of, and for the Bears, as a 3-4 outside linebacker, a guy who can stand up on his feet and rush from the edges there, but also a guy that can in space has the, like I said, the quick change of direction ability to be able to maintain and be respectable, in coverage, if you will. Those are the guys that really, in terms of the game. Also, Baron Browning, the linebacker from Ohio State, really impressed me. I saw him more as like a will, maybe even a strong side linebacker in a 4-3. But what they did yesterday and what they did actually toward the tail end of the week was they stood him up in a 2-point stance and they had him rushing off the edge. And I think he really showed the quick first step off the edge. He showed the ability to bend the corner and get around the tackle and provide pressure. And I think he's a kid that I see in a whole different light now. I see as a guy, as a potential linebacker for the Bears, as an edge guy coming off, like I said, as a 3-4 offside linebacker. So Baron Browning from Ohio State is a guy to keep an eye on. We talked about Goldston in terms of him being able to, make some plays. Jonathan Cooper, another defensive end at Ohio State, also showed out in terms of his pass rush ability. We talked about Ellerson Smith already. I think some of the guys in the chat are talking about him. We already, brought him up. In terms of the week, safety, Richie Grant, the kid from UCF. Talk about a ball hawking safety. This is another guy, along with Hamlin, I'm totally in love with. These are two safeties that can come in and they can cover for you the slot receiver. And in Grant's case, he can play some cornerback for you as well. Talk about ball skills. This kid, Grant, for his career, he's got 10 interceptions, 17 pass defense, and he's got 5 forced fumbles to go along with 290 total tackles and 11.5 tackles for loss. So Richie Grant definitely made himself some money this week. And the other kid that to keep an eye on, we always talk about big safeties.
Excuse me, before you go on, I want to show you this clip of Richie Grant, and this is from practice, just to illustrate what you're talking about. This is him on a drill. Go take this away, Danny.
Yeah, we talked about, again, this is, he's playing a kid we talked about earlier, Josh Palmer, quickness. He shows that shiftiness to be able to move his feet, stay within the receiver's hip, and those makes a play and causes an incomplete pass. So this is the kind of skill set he showed. He's not only a guy who can be a free safety back in a ball hawking free safety in the backfield, but a guy that can come up and he can be a guy that can cover a slot receiver, a guy that can even play some cornerback, like we mentioned. And he's not afraid to hit. He'll come down, 290 career tackles, 11.5 tackles for loss. This is a guy that'll come down. He'll lay some lumber too if he needs to. But his game is coverage and being able to attack that football and make a play on a football. Damar Hamlin for me is a similar kind of a kid. And another kind of a bigger, enforcer type, if you will, is Hamza Nasruddin from FSU. 6'3", 213, 34-inch arms. This is another kid. He didn't play much last year. I think he only played 1 or 2 games, but his last full season was 2019. He had over 100 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 3 forced fumbles, 2 interceptions. Another guy to bring some size to the defensive backfield. A guy like that can come down and make some plays on the football, and also be a guy that can help wrap up some ball carriers and secure tackles. So I think finding that safety, a permanent safety next to Eddie Jackson, and kind of bringing Jackson to what he was doing prior to Pagano taking over, I think that's the key here. If you want to see the Bears to come back, their defense come back to the dominance that they were showing back in 2018.
Danny, 2 of those defensive linemen you touched on really made moves for me yesterday, and that was that kid from UCLA also. Yeah. I think he really separated himself from the Mobile, and he came in with absurd, measurable numbers. If I can, find it really, really quick here.
Yeah, also from UCLA, go ahead.
As a measuring it is like 6'2", 280, almost 11-inch hands. He's 10 3/4, just over 34-inch arms, 34 1/8, 84-inch wingspan. I mean, those are ridiculous, absurd measurables. And that kid, was really one of the guys I thought dominated as far as like defensive line drills all week. Had a really good game yesterday, put a lot of pressure on the ball. And then the Ellerson Smith kid, you said he came in at 247 yesterday. He actually came in at 262, right? And I was told that he played 2019 at 245 pounds. Which means that, 17-pound pickup in a year when he actually didn't play ball, and a good pickup, like he's actually in the weight room making moves that way. As far as his weight gains go, that's incredible. He looked like a different dude out there yesterday, both from a playability standpoint and from a physicality standpoint, as far as like his build. Seeing this kid on the hoof, I'm sure it looks a hell of a lot different than they did back in, December of 2019. A couple other guys, on the defensive line that stood out to me either yesterday or this week. I think Boogie Basham played with a lot of aggression and a lot of attitude. Malik Herring was kind of a flash player to me, but as a guy that was sort of overshadowed by Azeez Ojulari, I thought he was a guy that flashed here and there that I might not have really paid too much attention to otherwise. You talk about Jonathan Cooper. That kid is not going to wow you whatsoever with his measurables, but the way that he plays the game, he plays a lot of energy and a lot of aggression. You love that. Dalen Hayes had a really good week and a really nice day yesterday, and really, a microcosm of his second half of the year. Dalen Hayes had, as far as the 2020, from the half point on, had a really nice year and really elevated himself. I thought I was sort of ho-hum on him as a guy that came in with a lot of hyperbole as far as his draft stock, and I thought the first half of the year was a little bit mundane, but he came the second half of the year, really turned it on, became kind of a different player, and showed up really well. Flashed a lot of quickness and twitch and loose hips during the drills this week, and again had a really nice day yesterday. Janarius Robinson was a guy I wrote off from FSU. The outside linebacker from FSU, wore number 96 yesterday, was a guy I wrote off, really honestly, the first couple games of the year, because he looked like a dude that wasn't going to compete. He's a guy that came in arguably with the most ridiculous measurables of the entire day, of the entire week. 6'5", 266, 11 hands, almost 36-inch arms, 35 and 3/4, and 87-inch wingspan. This dude is just nothing but length. He's nothing but arms and legs and calves and necks and everything else. This kid's unbelievable. He made a couple really nice plays yesterday, used his length to his advantage, rushed the passer, showed some twitch. Really showed a lot of things that I didn't see out of him at Florida State through the better part of the year. So he's a guy that's probably going to gain a lot of momentum and get himself in a draftable position, if not late, but maybe mid, day 3. As far as linebackers go, I don't think it was a particularly deep, group. But obviously, Tough Borland showed up, and I always thought that this was a kid that exhibited excellent fundos, in those wide receiver, not wide receiver, but running back linebacker drills. He does a really good job of staying square to the linebacker, using his feet, shuffling, and being able to, allow his fundamentals to make plays for him. And he's a kid that he understands his weaknesses, which is really, honestly, being honest with yourself is, half the battle a lot of times. When you're able to understand that, you're not going to be the most athletic dude out there, but where you beat the opposition a lot of times when you don't have the athletic advantage is with your mind and is with your fundamentals and how sharp you are and how tight you play. And that kid, goes out there and really, uses what he knows from a position, a skill, standpoint, specific standpoint and goes out there and makes plays a lot of times. The Borland kid, from Ohio State too, I really like KJ Britt. The funny thing about KJ Britt is that it feels like he has absurdly long arms, but then you look at his numbers and it's only like just under 31 inches. But he plays as if he has length, which I think is something to speak for.
He's physical as heck, man. His
he sure
are physical as heck.
Yeah, he's another dude that goes out there looking to crush skulls, and I love that out of linebackers. So, I mean, Britt's a guy that I really liked yesterday as well.
So if we're emptying out our defensive mailbag here, I mean, I got a ton of more names if you want me to go ahead, Aldorf, or we're going to come back to another segment on defense, or if we're going to move on.
No, go for it, brother.
Yeah, defensive line. Another kid that I think that really showed off for me was Rashad Weaver from Pitt. I know his Jones his teammate gets a lot of hype, but I mean Weaver is 6'4", 33+ inch arms. I think he really was dominant in one-on-ones, whether it's as an end or inside as a defensive tackle. I think this is a guy that's going to be a 4-3 base end at the next level, a guy that can kick inside on passing downs and that what you call a NASCAR package and rush from a defensive tackle position. I think Rashad Weaver had a really good week this week in Mobile. You talked about Dalen Hayes. I think he really showed out tremendously this week as a defensive end potential as well as an outside linebacker potential. I think him and Teron Jackson from Coastal Carolina are kind of guys in a similar boat for me. Both guys that show the ability to be versatile, guys that can put their hands in the ground but also be able to rush from a 2-point stance. And I got more twitch than I thought they had coming into the week. So those are two guys I really liked a lot. Malik Herring was solid. The Georgia kid, more of a bigger body, 6'3", 283 pounds, a guy that can probably take up some space in the middle, but he showed some pass rush ability early on in the week in terms of the one-on-ones. William Bradley King, a guy I didn't know much about. He's a guy he transferred from Arkansas State to Baylor. 6'3", 254. He's probably going to be a guy who's going to be an outside edge guy at the next level. Only had 3.5 sacks last year's first year at Baylor, but he's a guy that showed some potential in terms of ability to be an edge rusher off on the outside. And Jordan Smith, I don't know, I haven't seen much about him. I have him highlighted as a guy that go back and watch. He's a kid from UAB. 6'6", the measurables are off the chart. 6'6", 33+ inch arms, 9.5, 9.25 arm length, hand size that you say. Just a twitched up edge rusher. This is a guy that's got the quick first step length, ability to bend around the corner and get some pressure. I think he showed out in the one-on-ones. They have him listed as linebacker, so I'm interested in maybe more so as an outside linebacker, like in a 3-4.
That's what he played at UAB.
Jordan Smith. Yeah.
Honestly, when you go back and look at that film, you're not going to be very impressed by what you see. There's a reason why I didn't bring him up when we did our edge rusher show back in, what was that, November or whatever? Because
he only had he had limited production this past year. He only had 4.5 sacks, but if you go back to last year, he had 8 sacks. So I think I don't know if he looked like he played the complete season. I'm not sure, but he's a guy that definitely jumped, at least on the practice tape, jumped out as a guy that's twitched up and has got that quick first step. And in terms of linebacker, man, Chaz Surratt really looks instinctive, quick. You talk about another guy that's gonna be a sideline tackling machine. In 2 years at North Carolina, this is a kid that came to North Carolina, and Neil, you know this. He came to North Carolina as a left-handed quarterback. 2 years as quarterback, and then they flipped him over to linebacker, and all he did in 2 years and get 206 tackles, 22.5 tackles for loss, 12.5 sacks, 2 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles in just 2 seasons. This kid looks like he was tailor-made to play inside linebacker. And like I said, put him, if you get the Bears can get him and next to Roquan Smith, you're talking about a guy that's instinctive, quick, sideline, a guy that's also fearless in terms of coming downhill, running, run fits. You talked about smart. This is a kid that really tackling machine, and I would love to see somehow get him in the mix here in Chicago and line him up next to Roquan Smith as Trevathan's heir apparent there, middle linebacker. So, man, I'm telling you, a number of guys really stood out for me this week. Quincy Roche had a terrific week. A guy that we both pointed out in our edge rusher show, the guy from Miami, and one-on-ones. I mean, he really showed out as well, and the game he showed out as well yesterday as well. So the kid from Miami, Quincy Roche, another guy that could probably be an outside linebacker, edge rusher too.
I love guys that do nothing but win, and that's what Chaz Surratt has been. That's what it's the Surratt brothers. And they went to different schools too, which is odd to me. But the Surratt brothers, all they do is win. Basketball, football in high school, basketball, Chaz was gonna played basketball in North Carolina, but he decided to focus on football full time. But he as a guy that is that talented at two different sports, and all he did was win at both those sports in high school, comes in as a quarterback, transitions over to linebacker, equally as productive, equally as important to his team, and badass player. I mean, I love that in guys that are selfless to the point to where they do whatever it takes to help the team win. And obviously he's tough and he's physical and he's smart. I mean, I could go on and on about that kid.
Did you guys talk about Jabril Cox at all? Steven asked a question.
I did not bring him up. He's a guy that there's some questions from people I've spoken to in terms of what his best position is going to be, whether it's going to be a linebacker or one of those hybrid safety / linebacker. I think he only came in at 226, Neil, if I got that right.
I think you're right.
But 6'1", 6'2", 226. So he's a guy that if you're playing a 4-3 system, hey, if you're Lovie Smith and the Houston Texans, you want Jabril Cox as your weak side will linebacker, a guy that can run, see ball, go get ball, that type of linebacker. But some teams might like him as a hybrid, safety type, the guy that can drop back in coverage a little bit. His skill set is speed, sideline, and coverage ability. So definitely a guy that's going to be in the mix. I think maybe a second, third round pick here. But in terms of the Bears, I think. I don't know. At 226 kind of worries me.
233 actually.
233. Okay. So
6027, 233. And the length measurables are not good either. He's right. Less than 9 on the hand width. 8'6'8", 32'6'8" arms, 79'4'8" wings. So he's as far as length goes, not a long dude, but he's got some girth to him. I think he's just under 6'3", 233 pounds. He got a little bit of size. It's just a matter of where he fits, I think.
And I don't know if you agree, Neil, but if I'm going to pick a linebacker, and I want a guy who's more instinctive, and I think like a kid like Chaz Surratt is more instinctive. Now, Cox is probably more athletic than Surratt, but I think Surratt is more instinctive, and I think that's a kid that still gives you that sideline stuff, still gives you the ability to come downhill and in coverage as well. But I think Surratt is a kid I would go for if I'm a team like the Bears, for example.
I hate to sound like a 1983 football coach, but the kid's just a ball player.
Surratt, or are you talking about Surratt or Cox?
Surratt, yes. Chaz Surratt.
Yeah, it's a dude.
Kid's a ball player. Kid just wins, man. That's all it is. Just win, baby, right?
There you go. All right. I wanted to share with you guys 3 guys that I would love for the Bears to target in day 3. And this, again, is based on my knowledge of these players to this date. But what I saw out of Benjamin St-Juste out of Minnesota, whoa, man, I was just so impressed. Neil and I were actually talking about him prior to the show before, Danny, you jumped in. And this guy, Neil, maybe you can share with the audience what you've learned about this guy while I play some clips from what he's done in the 2019 season.
Number 83 into the end zone for the touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, Benjamin St-Juste, I think one of the things that you love about long corners is the ability to make the plays that he made in that game yesterday. That one play along the sideline where, I mean, he just really honestly used his length to get in between that play right there. He just uses his length. If I can go look up his numbers real quick, I believe height weight was 6'0",
Yeah, he's 6'3", 200 pounds.
6'3", 200 pounds. 32-inch arms, 80 and a quarter wingspan for a kid that's 6'3" and a half almost. I think one of the things that college teams really look for, as opposed to really long and big receivers that can run fast, is guys that can counteract that, right? So you're always going to look for this kid that is long and rangy with incredible arms and the ability to move laterally. And that's what St-Juste is. And, Keith Taylor's the same way. St-Juste is, he uses his length to his advantage in all the best ways. And I think that's invaluable when you are looking for a guy to complement some of the guys that you have already. Length and speed. That's what wins in this game. Obviously, toughness is football. Let's be honest, but length and speed wins.
A guy that originally played at Michigan and transferred over to Minnesota because I think he had a health concern. He had a hamstring injury that was really serious and almost cost him his career. But he recovered enough to resurrect his career, and he did so over at Minnesota. He looked good in those limited games that he played at Minnesota, and he definitely looked good to my eyes in the Senior Bowl. Danny, did he catch your attention at all?
Yeah, I wasn't. I haven't delved that much into his tape coming into the week. From what I saw of practice, I mean, you love the size, you love the length. Neil is right, but for me, those quicker twitcher, more twitchy, short area, fast, receivers gave him some problems. He was a little grabby, a little, reaching and tugging on jerseys. So I drew a couple flags in practices. So I don't know. I think he's going to be more of like one of those bigger, maybe a cover, like a drop back zone corner. They even played him at safety as well. So I think some NFL scouts have some questions in terms of what his best position is, whether it's going to be corner or safety in the league. So I think, his ability to stay in phase downfield could be in question at the next level versus those quicker, more faster receivers. So we'll see how it turns out. But I haven't delved that much into his tape, just from what I've seen at the Senior Bowl. I think, there's some question marks in terms of what he might be. But definitely if a team like, Seattle loves those big defensive backs, right? The corners, the safeties, a team like that can press at the line of scrimmage, use that length, and be able to, be someone that can press guys at the line of scrimmage and just be a disruptor there to, break off those presses and all that stuff. So, but I have to look more into him, but I just, in terms of the Bears, I don't know how much of a fit he'd be here. To be honest with you. So
I just feel like, we're seeing more and more teams put their number one wide receiver in the slot. This has been happening for years now, but I just see there's an increase of putting your number one receiver in the slot because you got such an advantage there from the quarterback standpoint. It's easier to throw the ball to. He's there. He's highly visible and so forth. And then most teams, their slot corner is this short little guy. And so you need safeties to come in and guard these bigger slot receivers now. And why not have a cornerback that has that length and bring them out on your nickel packages so that when you have, a 6'1" wide receiver playing the slot, boom, you got a guy like this kid, Benjamin St. Juste, there to play. Now, can he play that position? Can he be effective in the NFL doing that? I don't know, but I just see there being a trend in the NFL where bigger wide receivers are playing that slot. And so you've got to respond with that, with your appropriate personnel.
Well, typically, go ahead, Neil.
I was going to say that the trend going from college to the NFL with really all things as far as concepts and strategy these days, the NFL is looking for big, long corners. And, we had one, a couple years ago in Cam Dantzler that's now in Minnesota. Yeah. And they're going to give him every opportunity in the world to succeed because he's big and long and can run. Mm-hmm. And not that Cam Dantzler was fast by any stretch of the imagination. He was a 4.63, 4.68 kid. I can't remember exactly which one it was. He ran 4.63 for us. But those types of kids are going to be given every opportunity in the world until they just outright fail to be able to play because there is an extreme lack of length at the cornerback position, which is going to be fixed over the course of time. But it's just weird how it's taken so long for the cornerback position to catch up to the wide receiver position as far as length and size goes.
I'm with you, bro. All right. Before I get
real quick on that note right there, typically these guys that line up in the slot are got to be guys that can play a two-way goal. It's got to have that lateral speed, the quickness, the short area burst, and typically guys that big don't have it. So that's why those guys typically are put on the outside. That's why the offensive coaches are bringing these big receivers inside so they can take advantage of that size on those smaller, shiftier, cornerbacks. So, that's why I think the trend now you're seeing a lot more safeties that can be guys that can cover, guys that we talked about today, Richie Grant, Damar Hamlin, guys that can come in and give you some size at 5'11", 6 feet, and give you also some of that lateral agility, lateral quickness, a short area burst to be able to cover these receivers and stay in phase with them. In terms of the slot receivers. So I think that's something you will see more. But guys like the big corners, like the 6'2", 6'3", I think those guys typically have trouble with, lateral agility.
That's why I think that the Washington kid is so valuable, though, because he seems to have all that short area, quickness and burst and athletic ability that kid's a little bit of a unicorn when you start looking at his attributes and his size, putting all that together and his ability to guard the ball.
I got to do some research, but that's Keith Taylor Jr. Is that the Keith Taylor that used to? Oh, that was Keith Traylor used to be with the Bears. No, Keith Traylor.
Yes.
Big Keith Traylor.
You're really fishing for that one, weren't you, Danny? You were hoping. You were hoping.
Yeah, that reel in that deep part of the pond and came up with nothing. Hey, before I go on to my second player, I wanted to make sure we get this question responded by the Factor. He says, who's the linebacker Danny was talking about, fast and would fit good next to Roquan? I missed the name.
Chaz Surratt, a linebacker from North Carolina.
There you go. Okay. Now, second on my list is KJ Britt, inside linebacker, and that is, of course, because of the need for the inside linebacker. Now, I went back and looked at scouting reports on KJ Britt at the beginning of the season, and most people were saying, he's kind of a backup linebacker. He's going to fight for playing time if he makes it to as a special teams player. He's not really starter quality and so forth. But I think that during the 2020, from what I saw in the Senior Bowl, is really what I should talk about, is that he kind of showed more of the ability to potentially be a starter. And so if you're looking for an inside linebacker to eventually take over the spot of Danny Trevathan, who most likely will be back as Roquan Smith, Robin to his Batman, maybe you take a sixth round, seventh round, if Britt is available, you take a flyer on him and try to develop him as the heir apparent to Danny Trevathan. You guys have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, we both brought up KJ Britt.
Right.
In our defensive mailbags, and if you will, but I love the kid's physicality. He's instinctive as heck. Yeah, he doesn't have all the measurables. He's not a sideline athlete like some of the other guys we talked about, the Jabril Cox, the Chaz Surratts, but he's a guy that his run fits are physical as heck. Comes down, he's a thumper in the middle of that defense, and he's a guy that's like I said, instinctive as heck. So he's not going to be great in coverage, although he did okay, I want to say, in the drills and the one-on-one drills, lined up versus running backs and tight ends down, at the Senior Bowl this week. So KJ Britt is definitely a guy that I'm high on. If you bring him in, you got to know his limitations, right? You got to know this is a guy that's not going to be the athlete that Roquan Smith is, but what he doesn't have in athletic ability, he has in instincts, and he gives you that physical presence in the middle.
Yeah, I like Britt. He was a kid that he was a really kind of a local kid when he went to Auburn. He's from Oxford, Alabama, and what that high school does is do nothing but breed toughness. And that kid that's really what he was. That was the reason why he got signed to where he got signed, is because he knocked dudes' heads off in high school. He didn't impress you with his measurables. He didn't impress you with his athletic, ability and his testing numbers and the underwear Olympics and all that kind of stuff. And touching on his measurables, I mentioned before, that kid plays with length. It feels like his arms are absurdly long, but he just plays with great length. He measured in at 6'0", 6 foot and an eighth, 239 pounds, just under 9.5 hands, 30 3/4 arms, 76 wingspan. Like, none of that's impressive, right? None of that just wins, just like walking onto the field. But the kid plays long. You always talk about sometimes like basketball players, like a 6'8" power forward. He plays big because just the way he positions himself, his body, like his technique, his fundamentals, and everything else. This kid plays big. This kid plays physical. I think he what he gives you is everything Danny Trevathan gives you outside of better athletic ability and that toughness. Danny Trevathan just doesn't play with that same pop, I think, that he used to. KJ Britt does that. I think KJ Britt is probably a pigeonholed inside linebacker, perfect for what we run here in Chicago.
Man, I'm really excited about and it's not just KJ Britt. I think there were some other inside linebackers, and we'll talk about this in upcoming shows, that show some promise that we can replace Danny Trevathan, not necessarily in 2021, because again, I think he's going to be the starter, and unless there's a high round investment or a high free agent investment in an inside linebacker, we're going to see Danny Trevathan as the inside linebacker. But I just have a good feeling that we can bring in a developmental player. And I was hoping that it would be a Joel Iyiegbuniwe or a Josh Woods, but it doesn't appear to be that those guys are going to take advantage of the opportunity that's been there. Now, the third player that I had, and you guys have talked about him already and spoke glowingly about him, but it's this kid, Jay Bates, the tight end from Boise State. John Bates, the tight end from Boise State. Again, I am looking for a day 3 tight end that can play that dual tight end position. What's it called when you have 2 tight ends? 13 formation?
12 personnel.
Oh, excuse me. And so this guy, to me, with the tape that I saw of him during practice and the little that he was targeted, I think he only had 3 targets on Saturday's game at the Senior Bowl. One was an incomplete pass deep, a 13-yard reception, and then a 7-yard catch that was called back because of offensive line holding. But he just, again, mostly because of the tape that I saw during the week, this guy really impressed the hell out of me. He's just athletic, and some of the reports that I read, this guy can be a really, really good day 3 find. Talk about him, and I'll find a highlight to share with people.
Yeah, he's a guy that I mentioned that really impressed me throughout the week. He's a guy that I'm going to go back and do some more work on. The only thing about him is like he's not going to have the speed that you look for these move tight ends, and in terms of lining up in line, he's going to be a guy that's going to have to work on his blocking, but everything else. Talk about a guy that can extend away from his body. He's got natural hands catcher. Is a guy that can pluck the ball out of the air. I'm very impressed by him. He looks like to be a smart kid, a guy who can run clean, crisp routes. So, day 3 tight end, I'm all for. And I haven't even dug really into his tape, just going off of what I've seen this week. He's a guy that really impressed me. And there's times I look at a kid play and I got a sense, and I this is a guy that's going to be a playmaker, a guy that's going to be, like I said, not going to be the biggest, the fastest, or anything like that. It's not going to be all twitched up, but he's a guy that's going to be just be a solid tight end, going to be a good number 2, possibly, he might be able to start eventually, but it comes in as a real solid number 2 tight end.
Yeah. 6'0", 5'5", 259, big boy, man. 9'5" ace, hand 32 and a half arm, 79 and a quarter wingspan. Big catch boy. Long arms, just like big body dude. I think it'll just be another one of these situations like a lot of these guys. Like, what's the fit? What's going to be the fit? And his pro day is going to be huge. The testing numbers are going to be huge for him. He already did, what he needed to do as far as measuring in with, some numbers that, really set him on the map, having a good week where he flashed. I personally need to do a hell of a lot more homework on him too. I can't really speak, from any sort of empirical data standpoint, saying that I watched, 8 games on the kid, but he's a guy that definitely flashed and he's worth looking into down the road.
One of the things that I learned about him when I was doing a little bit of research, reading articles, is that he's a good athlete. In high school, he was on the track team, not as a runner, but just doing discus throws and hurdles and blah, blah, blah. And just a really a good athlete. And so you want that out of your tight end, a guy who is just not a plotter. And in today's NFL, you want a guy like that. So let's keep an eye on Bates. Any other guys that you want to talk about before we pull the plug on this edition of Draft on Tap, our special Senior Bowl edition?
Well, we didn't talk about offensive linemen, and there's a couple of guys, a lot of guys that really impressed me this week.
Forgot about that. Yeah, there were, and it seemed to me like during the week, we saw a lot more impressive offensive line play than we did in the actual game. But that is okay because, during the game, you're really not getting a good sense of the game. Guys are being thrown out there for the first time. They're figuring it out. You want to see them in these one-on-one drills and so forth. And I know you guys have been looking at all that practice tape. Who in the offensive line really stood out for you?
You want to take this?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to take this. I mean, obviously, Quinn Miners made us all like really giddy at we're watching, like we discovered fire or something. But that kid, I think what you love about that kid is just the energy that he plays with, the physicality that he plays with. Coming from a D3 school, measured in really well at over 6'3". Pull these measurables real quick. I got him here right in front of me. He was 6'0",
320 with 33-inch arms, 10 and a quarter hands.
10 and a quarter hands, 82-inch wingspan. Yeah, he was a kid that came in really with, I'm not sure really how many people knew about this kid, but he made a stamp early and often. And, borderline dominated all week. And, the Osa from UCLA is arguably my favorite, defensive lineman out of this class during this week of practices in this game. I mean, he stonewalled Osa on several, reps during practice this week. I love the kid's personality, the beer gut. They showed that video during the game yesterday, training in Canada with kegs and tree trunks and all this stuff. I mean, looking like he's about to fight Drago. I mean, that's some fun stuff, man. I'm so hyped up about this kid. I thought he was going to play yesterday. They said he had that busted hand from Thursday's practice, I think it was, and he was planning on playing, but I think the cooler has prevailed there. He sort of got out of his emotions, and everybody decided it'd be best for him not to play. But the kid wanted to play. He wanted to get out there. He wanted to smash somebody. I love that kid's mentality. He's got that get after your ass mentality, man.
And he did finish practice with a busted hand. I think like 30 minutes of playing through pain shows how tough he is, and a great personality. I think you mentioned the videotape of him dunking, and I saw an interview with him, and he said that had always been a dream of his, to be able to dunk a basketball, because it demonstrate to him that he was athletic enough to do that. And so he had been working on it. And once he could do it, he wanted to videotape it. And as he said, I wanted to share it with everybody. And it was pretty cool seeing that big ass guy dunk a basketball.
Phenomenal. And I mean, again, he's not just a meathead. He's not just a tough guy. Like the kid can move. The kid can flip his hips. The kid can redirect. He's strong. He's got functional strength. He can put you in the ground. I think he put Patrick Jones, one of the guys that we're so high on, into the dirt, a couple of times, and the video evidence of that. So I love that kid. I think we talked about him on the show Thursday. He's a kid that rose up the board so fast for me. I have him, probably early day 3, maybe late day 2. He's a third, fourth round guy for me. Somebody's gonna be really happy they have that kid. I think he's gonna do more than just be a good player. I think he's gonna be a locker room guy. He's probably gonna have some leadership. He's certainly going to be, the guy waving the towel, the rallying cry with those guys. I mean, he's got all kinds of energy and all those kinds of things. You love that. Some of these other guys that kind of stood out. I thought Jack Anderson looked decent at center. He's a guy that played tackle and guard throughout his career at Texas Tech. I think he looked decent at center. I still think that he's a guy that ends up going late in the third day as maybe a 6th or 7th round guy, just based on the fact that, this year wasn't necessarily as good as the years before. Is that shoulder healthy? Lots of questions there. David Moore came in as he was listed at 6'3", plus, measuring at 6'1.5", looked kind of boxy and squatty. Didn't necessarily have a strong week, even though he was named the player of the week from the offensive line position. I didn't necessarily think he had a strong week. He kind of fell down the board for me, but I still think that you look at some of the film that he put out this year. He did show a lot of strength and power in the way that he played. I think he could be a project type kid for a franchise that wants to go ahead and take a flyer on him, maybe in the 7th round, and groom him into being a center. Sounds like he was a pretty smart kid, very football savvy. So there's a possibility there for him. Deontay Brown came in really sloppy at 364 pounds. I loved the way that kid played historically. I think that he's a dude, though, that at 364 pounds is a detriment to him and his ability to move. He does still show those flashes of having that athletic ability. He can move around the field. When he pulls at that weight, it looks sloppy, it looks terrible, and it takes away from his overall value. I think if you get 25 to 30 pounds off that kid, at about 330 to 340, he's a monster, because he's shown before he has the ability to move his feet. He can redirect. He can put people on the ground. He has some mean streak, even though he's a really nice kid. He's one of those, guys off the field. He's kind of like a teddy bear. On the field, he's a monster. He's a kid that, he's still going to get drafted probably pretty high in terms of, late day 3, early day 2 is probably where I'd take him, unless he's, falling down some other people's boards. That's probably where I have him slotted. But he's got to restructure his body a little bit, because he's not very functional at that weight. Moving on down the list, Deontay Smith from East Carolina is the guy I didn't really put a whole lot of stock into. Actually measured in bigger at the Senior Bowl than he was listed on East Carolina's website, which usually it's the other way around. Usually they show up 2 inches shorter. This kid shows up 1.5 inches taller. And he was another one of those guys that had absurd measurables throughout the week. I think he's a guy, though, that's a late day 3, project guy, because, as far as his film goes, and he was a guy that got injured early in the year, decided to call it quits against UCF. He got hurt, had to sit out the rest of that game, decided to sit out the rest of the year. He's a guy that, he's got to be developed. And so he's probably a late day 3 guy that somebody just says, hey, here's a big, long dude that can move, tons of athletic ability. Let's see what we can make him. Right. Alex Leatherwood, I think, is a guy that we've talked about ad nauseum on the show. And he's a guy that brings a lot of position versatility. I think, Danny, you actually love him at left tackle now after what you saw this week. I still think he's a guy that can move, inside. He can stay outside. He can go to both sides of the ball. I think he presents a lot of versatility into what you can do with him. So he's a really intriguing prospect. I think he actually moves up my board a little bit. I think we had him at 4 in the show earlier in November. I think is when we talked about the offensive tackles. I think he moves up the board a little bit for me. Talk about Trey Smith. We love Trey Smith, another guy that we talk about ad nauseum on the show. Had a great week, big, powerful dude, measured in ridiculously as far as measurables go. Definitely on my all measurable team. He's a guy that really, I mean, I had him as probably a third round guy. He's probably, round 1 or 2 now for me. Ben Cleveland, I didn't really, get to see a whole lot of him. Drake Jackson, I thought looked interesting at guard. I still think that he's a center when it's all said and done. He's got the natural leverage and being a little bit short of a guy at 6'1" plus, and he plays with a bunch of physicality and toughness. Smart kid, has been playing centers his whole life. He's a guy that I don't think goes as high as minors. I think he's probably hovers mid-day 3 for me, but I liked some of what I saw out of him. Alaric Jackson, I had him as probably a round 4 guy, and I'm pretty steadfast on that. I think he's a guy though that I think does present you with some versatility. He practiced all over the field this week, at tackle on the right side, at guard on the right side, at left guard. I don't see a whole lot of power in that kid though. I don't see him being able to anchor against the really powerful dudes inside, and on the outside, I think he can get beat by the quicker, more athletic dudes. I think he's a little bit limited, which is why I think he's a mid-round guy. You move over to the other team. I think this other side here, this national team, Robert Hainsey, really, I was already high on that kid. As a scrappy dude that is just so mechanically sound. He showed this week, and he's another guy that practiced at all 5 positions and did a really good job at all 5 positions, performed at a high level at all 5 positions. I think in the game yesterday, he played guard and center and looked really good at center. But he's a guy that, he's just so fundamentally sound. He's like a machine out there. And the way that he plays with that scrappiness, that physicality, I think he's a guy that's probably a mid, high day 3 guy, and he's going to make somebody very happy. He's going to have a lot of longevity at the next level. Other guys that really made me happy this week, Robert Jones, we talked about on Thursday as a big, powerful dude, local kid from Chicago. Talked about Quinn Miners. Aaron Banks looked really good yesterday, practicing all over the field, but ultimately he's going to settle in at guard. You have Jalen Moore, I thought looked really natural at left guard rather than at tackle. I thought he had a really good week of practice at that position particularly. So it'll be interesting to see, where, the NFL teams really look at him. He played, I think, left guard in the game yesterday and didn't look half bad. I still want to see more out of Hudson at tackle. I'm not 100% sold of him being anywhere near a finished project. I still think he's a massive project that, has, again, we talk about guys with tons of length and he's got some athletic ability, got beat way too many times for me during the week in one-on-one drills. Spencer Brown, probably the biggest dude there. Is 6'8", all kinds of length, and as far as length measures go, his hands, his arms. Had a solid week. Still another guy I think has work to do to really solidify himself where he goes. Dylan Radden's a very, very stout and strong week on as far as he is concerned from North Dakota State. But I think by and large the American team was the side yesterday that had the most issues with keeping the quarterback clean. The national side of the ball was the more talented side, and I think you saw that in the final stat sheet where the national defensive linemen really got after those quarterbacks' asses and made life hell for Kellen Mund and Jamie Newman for most of the day.
Benny, talk to me about what you saw out of James Hudson. And I'm trying to find a clip of him because he got thrown out of the Cotton Bowl game, and I want to show that to people. But what do you think about this kid?
Hudson, 6'4", 302, 33-inch arms. He's a guy that's athletic. He's a guy that has a little bit of a messy streak. You talked about that bowl game where he was thrown out for using his helmet. So he's got that bit of it in him. What Neil was talking about in terms of the one-on-ones, you saw him at times I think he's more athletic than physical at this moment right now. He might add some more weight on him, some good muscle, get a little more power, more stout at the point of contact. But you saw him his ability to move his feet, shuffle his feet, and be able to cut off the angle of the outside edge rusher on those one-on-one drills. But there was times where he just got bullied back into the backfield by power. So I think that's a guy where at 6'4", 302, I could see him adding about another 10 to 15 pounds and being a little bit more formable in terms of the outside. His length is borderline for me in terms of playing outside. So his eventual best position could be inside at guard, but definitely a kid that impressed me. Definitely a kid in the later rounds that if he's there, gives you that versatility we talked about. position versatility, and a guy that can come in and be, someone you can develop into a starter eventually. Neil went through the whole roster for both sides, so I'll just go over the guys that really impressed me. Trey Smith for me is a first round pick. If we don't go quarterbacks and we go offensive line in the first round, Trey Smith is the guy I want for the Bears. Now, having said that, he's got blood clots, and that's a medical issue that he's got to make sure rectified, and teams have to do their due diligence there and make sure that's all good. That's all in the past. But this is a kid that can play left tackle, in my opinion, in the NFL. He can play left guard in NFL, in my opinion, and he can play right tackle in NFL, in my opinion. So this is a guy, talk about position versatility, clean as a whistle off the field. The only downside for me is that medical thing. If they can clear that up, this is a first-round pick all day. And if the quarterbacks are gone and Bears go Trey Smith first round, I'm good, because you can bring him in at left guard, you can bring him in at right tackle, and then you can eventually make him your future left tackle. I mean, this is the kind of guys where I've been talking about, been wanting the Bears to go look for. Trey Smith, Tennessee, is the guy. Alex Leatherwood, a guy that the NFL was talking about, his best position was going to be inside at guard. I think what he did this week, I think he proved he could play left tackle. And as a matter of fact, they said on the broadcast that the only way he agreed to come down to Mobile and play this week is if he played left tackle the whole week, because he wanted to, spell any doubts about him being a left tackle, all that stuff. So I think he did that, for me at least. I think this is a guy, if the Bears have him, he's my left tackle. Would I play him a left guard or right guard just in the meantime, just until we get rid of the Leno contract? Sure, not a problem. But he's a guy that can play left tackle in the NFL for me. Jalen Moore, he touched on, real quick, kid from Western Michigan, 6'4", 311, really surprised me. He's a guy that played left tackle in college, but he played left guard a lot in the game and in practice. And I think he can play both positions in the NFL. Left guard might eventually be his best position, but I think he's a guy that I would start off at left tackle and have him prove to me that he can't handle it before I move him inside to left guard. So Jalen Moore is a guy. I'm going to go back, do some more tape study on him. But this week, from the first practice to the game yesterday, he's a guy that really impressed me, the kid from Western Michigan. We touched on Hudson real quick. Robert Jones, you touched on Thursday. I think the kid from Wisconsin Whitewater, we've all talked about it ad nauseum. Robert Hainsey, the kid from Notre Dame. When we first did our tackle conversation, I was kind of hesitant to put him in there. I thought he was going to be a guard because of his size and his length. I think eventually guard might be his best position, but what he did this week is he impressed the heck out of me by playing right tackle, playing center, playing left guard, playing right guard. And I kind of sworn, I think I saw him take a snap or two at left tackle and some of the one-on-one drills as well. So that's all the versatility. And he's a guy that is a hard-nosed guy, the guy that'll play to the whistle. I think we've been talking about Notre Dame offensive linemen probably on every one of our shows this year. Just a well-coached team. All four of those guys are going to be drafted by the NFL. I think he's a guy that really this week solidified a fourth-round grade for me. Initially I had him in late day 3, but I think now he's in that possibly even third round. I mean, I don't know what Neil thinks about, but I think he's fourth round for me with a possibility to still move up. So Hainsey's a guy. Spencer Brown is a kid, talk about the length, the 6'8", the 34-inch arms. He's a guy that played right tackle. He's got to get stronger. He's got all the athletic ability. He's got the size to play tackle in the NFL, but he's just got to get stronger. Way too many times I've seen guys just get inside his chest and just bully him backwards. So definitely a project, but definitely a guy that you can bring in probably in the third round or so and develop there as well. So I don't know if it's just because I was just honed in on the offensive line that there were just so many guys that impressed me this week and in the game. There's also a lot of guys that didn't impress me. And if we have time for guys, I think Deontay Brown from Alabama really it looked bad. I mean, he looked bad, in terms of his lateral agility. We talked about this guy being when we did guards. He's probably more made for a power zone, power scheme blocking, where he goes north and south, just takes on his guys and just uses his power and his brute strength to be able to move guys off the line of scrimmage. You ask this kid to move laterally, or you ask him to pull and come out and release, he just looked sloppy the whole week. And even in the game, it just looked like he didn't want to be there. So I don't know if it was just a lack of want or didn't want to be there and he was forced to be there. I'm not sure, but he just looked horrible this week, in my opinion. Deontay Brown from Alabama. Alaric Jackson, you touched on, Neil. the kid from Iowa. He's a guy that I kind of pounded the table for when we had our discussion for tackles, and I thought he could play left tackle. He disappointed me this week. First of all, start off with his measurables. He's a guy that came in. His arms, I think it was 32 or 33, just barely at that level there. So left tackle, he looks like he's athletically he might be out of place there. Left tackle, he kind of responded better at right tackle. And played, showed better in terms of in the practices and also in the game. But I think that there's another guy that's eventually his best position is going to be inside at guard, whether it's right guard or left guard. So I had him. The only reason he disappointed me is because I thought he was going to be a left tackle in the NFL. After this week, I think he's either a right tackle or a guard, most likely a guard at the next level. So those are just some of the names there that I kind of just stuck off the top of my head here. But definitely, this is a good year to be looking for offensive linemen. And like I said, we haven't even talked about some of the underclassmen, like the Cosmes and the Sewells and all the other guys too. So definitely a good year to be looking for an offensive lineman. I think if the Bears hone in on that position, they're going to have plenty of opportunity to improve that the team through the draft.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if you saw that clip I threw up on yesterday morning about on Dylan Radins going up against Ellerson Smith. But Radins, I mean, to me, like I'm not sure why, but it felt like he didn't take nearly as many reps as some of these other guys did. But the reps that he did take, like this one rep that really caught me was, Ellerson Smith. He's one of those kind of shiftier, edge rusher type dudes. Radin showed exceptional reactionary athleticism. He mirrors the rusher, maintain balance and base, look to initiate contact. I mean, that is exactly what you look for in a big, long left tackle facing arguably the most athletic dude on the defensive rush. So yeah. I mean, that's a dude that he showed a lot of really good things towards the tail end of 2019, which is the only film that I watched. I watched the playoffs of 2019, those 4 games or whatever they play in the FCS level. But you see him. He gets off. He looks to initiate contact. He gets the first arm out, locks him in. Has the ability to anchor and control the defensive lineman. Being able to mirror him while engaged. I mean, these are all things that really are sort of the unteachable things, but also the teachable things. I mean, if you know what I mean, those are things that should be natural. And he has shown on tape. He has shown throughout the course of the week his ability to do that.
Yeah, Ryan's a guy I forgot to talk about, but he too was a guy that impressed me. I think he got better as the week went along. I think he started at left tackle, was a little rough in the first practice. They moved him inside the guard. I'm like, oh, okay, this guy might be a guard. But then eventually they put him back at tackle, and I think that's where he kind of shined. And yeah, I think by Thursday he was on his feet and he was comfortable at left tackle. And I think that kind of answers at least my questions in terms of can you play left tackle next level. I think he can. And maybe another kid we're talking about, took a year off this year, only played 1 game really. But definitely a kid. And, like I said, just a lot of potential, a lot of depth here at the offensive line position, whether it's a guard or tackle or whatnot. So definitely it's something to look forward to.
He didn't take the year off, and the FCS decided not to play. So that's
what I meant. Yeah,
that's the thing too, though. And I mentioned that at some point this weekend was that those lower levels taking this year off was such a massive detriment to a lot of these kids' scouting and evaluation process. And you saw normally you have a hell of a lot more lower level kids in games like these. And especially in the games that didn't play, like the East-West game. I'm not sure who else, decided to go ahead and take the year off as far as all-star games go. You have these lower level guys that have the ability to go ahead and show out against higher level guys. And you have these lower level guys playing a full season of football, being able to be seen on the hoof and seen live in practice and on game day. And not having this season just killed a lot of guys. And now they're relying on January, February, and March to really solidify their draft value going into April. And it's just an unfortunate consequence of, really everything we've been dealing with.
That's why Jim Nagy, again, the executive director of the Reese Senior Bowl, deserves so much credit because what he pulled off here, so many other all-star games and bowl games and universities thought they couldn't pull off, yet he did it. And he had multiple interviews this week and he talked about the process and so forth. And they started contingency plans a year ago when the virus started to come out. They just said, well, maybe if this thing goes on a while, let's figure out how we would do the interviews and so forth. And then as time went on, they were like, holy cow, this thing isn't going away anytime soon. And so they figure out a plan and they executed it to the T. And so kudos to them, and a shame on the NFL for not. And perhaps I'm wrong here, but the NFL should have participated more in trying to have some of these other All-Star Bowl games, and providing them with the resources necessary to do this. Because now what's happened? They're not going to have a combine, and
that's
so
a mistake. I think that's a mistake right there.
Absolutely. And so when the Reese Senior Bowl says the draft starts in Mobile, boy, it really does this year.
It ends in Mobile.
In Mobile, and they're going to have these pro days that are going to be the substitute for the combine. But there's not going to be any uniformity. That everything that they learn at these pro days has to be taken with a grain of salt in comparison with the conditions and blah 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 blah. So it's not good. The NFL could have done a better job of not only providing resources for the bowl games, the All-Star Bowl games, but and also, figuring out a way to monetize it, because we know everything that the NFL does is about monetizing their actions to get more money. And there are millions, and literally millions of fans that are just so into this that we would have figured out a way to supplement some of the income that they would have invested into making these bowl games and all-star games a possibility. And the fact that they aren't thinking outside of the box, aren't thinking innovatively of how to help the NFL field a better product with the assessment process in the postseason just baffles the hell out of me. It just is ridiculous. And if I can continue on in my mini rant here, the NFL Network, God bless them, they always do a decent broadcast of the game. But I think that they can do so much more in terms of really the people who tune into the Senior Bowl are people like us. They're draftniks. They want to know who is it that's playing right guard right now, who's out on the field and so forth. They could do so much more in terms of putting graphics on. Here's who's on the field. Get rid of all those interviews that they do on the field. Jim Nagy, God bless them, and the Reese spokesman, and all those guys should be either before halftime or after the game. But during the game, it should be about scouting. It should be about telling stories of these players. It should be about helping the average fan and the draftnik fan learn more about these players that are out in the field. That's what that game is about. This morning when I was watching the Barfly Tailgate show, they were talking about the Senior Bowl and their impressions, and they said, we kind of just had it half on, and so watch Draft on Tap for a really good assessment. And that's the problem. It's because it's only half on because there's all these nondescript players up on the screen. You don't know who the American team is. You don't know who the national team. You got to kind of think a little bit about, it's the color of you don't know who's on the field and so forth. And so the announcers and the TV crew can do so much better job of educating the fans as to who's out there in the football field, why we should be paying attention to them, where the scouts are projecting them to be, and where they could end up based on a better performance and so forth. There's just so many great storylines going on at the Senior Bowl, and I just can't believe that they aren't doing justice, or more justice, I should say, because I'm not totally complaining on the NFL Network's broadcast. I think, I'm so glad Daniel Jeremiah is there to provide his expertise and so forth, but I just want more. I would love to see an additional broadcast of the Senior Bowl where they're even breaking down more tape and stuff. I'll
add to that because of NFL Network, because typically they always do the week-long practices as well. And
right.
they didn't do it this year, but ESPN did it, and then I was forced to have to listen to Todd McShay's crappy ass analysis. It's like I'd rather listen to Daniel Jeremiah, a guy I respect who's done it before, and his analysis as opposed to what these guys were saying. So I'm not sure why they did that either. They didn't. I mean, if ESPN can be there, why can't NFL Network be there? So I wasn't really sure about that as well. So that's another thing I like to add to your complaint there.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I said on Thursday, but it took me until probably Thursday afternoon until I realized the NFL Network was not doing the practices and ESPNU was doing it instead. So I missed an entire week's worth of practice. I mean, at least I had the coach's tape.
Yeah.
if I have the coach's tape, I would be screwed. But I mean, I think that was crap communication as far as NFL Network goes. Or I don't know if it was ESPN or NFL. Somebody should have done a better job of promoting the fact that they had the practices, because I had no clue.
I don't know if they thought because of what things going on in the world with COVID, the people might think this is like, something important, but a lot of people look forward to this time of the year. Like, this is where you start, like I said, draft starts at Mobile. This is where people start getting familiar with these players, with these names. That way, when the draft comes around, they'll have some reference in terms of who these guys are taking in the third, fourth round that you never heard of before or never seen play. Oh yeah, I seen him play at the Senior Bowl. Yeah, at the week practice, he had a good week of practice, right? Dax Raymond was a guy that the Bears brought in as an undrafted free agent, and you and I were like, yes, go get this guy. Now it didn't work out for him here, but he's a guy that we saw at the Senior Bowl. Now, we were there live watching him play, but we knew this guy made some plays, had some potential, right? Imagine if you're a fan who had never seen Utah State play, never heard of a guy named Dax Raymond, but now the Bears are going after him and getting him as an undrafted free agent. You're like, all right, I seen this guy make plays at the Senior Bowl during those practices and during the week. So, hey, this guy's got a chance. Now, when you fast forward to the preseason, when Dax Raymond is getting snaps in the third, fourth quarter of those games, you're paying attention. Like, oh, let's see if he does the same thing. So I think that they totally missed the boat. Again, I don't know if it was a whole COVID thing and they figured people would lose interest. But, the NFL draft is something that we all know that you don't lose interest in. If we could do this stuff year-round, people would watch it year-round.
You ain't kidding. And there's ways to monetize it. So it's not a public service by the NFL. They have an investment to make into this, and fans like us are just going to buy into it, and it's going to help ratings and so forth. They just have to figure out a way to do it and to respect, so many of us fans who are students of the game and want more lessons. They have the resources to do it. They should not think so much in terms of mass appeal, because the average fan, it may not be interested in some of the detail that we want, but there are millions of fans who want stuff, which is why our show is so popular and so many other shows like us are popular. And I want to just remind people, one of the things that makes our show different from other draft shows is that our specific focus is on the Chicago Bears. Danny and Neil are looking at things through the lens of the Chicago Bears needs, schemes, players that can be complemented with by the pickup of a particular player in the draft and so forth. All these factors, that's what they are doing. And there's so many other great shows and publications and so forth. And I'm not saying don't listen to them and don't buy them, but it's highly likely they're not going to be doing the deep dive that Neil and Danny are doing in terms of looking at this in terms of the Chicago Bears. Guys, let's throw it around for final thoughts. I'll start with you, Neil Stopchinski.
Oh man, final thoughts. Well, hey, hopefully we don't get snowed in too much the rest of the night. That's my biggest final thought. I have places to go in the morning. But man, I said on Thursday, I love this week, and although you touched on it, I absolutely love this week. It's my favorite weeks of the year. And normally we would be in Mobile, right? Well, not right now, but we would have been this past week. We would have been in Mobile, talking to players, talking to scouts, talking to maybe coaches, doing a live show. And then that would have been awesome. That was the plan. Unfortunately, it didn't work out the way we wanted it to. But next year we're going to do that shit. We're going to rock it out. It's going to be awesome. And I can't wait. Yep. But ultimately, I mean, going forward, you look at it, it's January 31st. We got 3 months, and over the course of the next 3 months, in terms of what's going to be happening on these kids' plates, is going to be probably a lot of Zoom interviews. Hopefully, a lot of one-on-one workouts. Hopefully, that doesn't go away, because normally, February and March ends up being a lot of times when position coaches, head coaches, GMs, directors of player personnel, the necessary, bigwigs that, need to make decisions. They're on campus. They're working players out. They're sitting them down in the film room. They're asking them questions about life. And they're getting some real one-on-one time with all these players. Hopefully that doesn't go away. Hopefully that's still a thing, because that's also critically important to a lot of these kids' draft potential and a lot of these kids' value and their process. And so you hope that, everybody's going to have their pro day, and that's going to be fine. But what happens on pro day is that, there's just too much foot traffic going on, for a lot of these kids to really establish with certain teams what needs to be established. There's way too much foot traffic, and a lot of teams historically would wait until they're able to get on campus and go one-on-one with the kid they're trying to get one-on-one with, right? So, that's pretty much what normally you look forward to, or that's normally what you look for to happen over the course of February and March heading into April. And hopefully these kids still get that. But, hey, you still have at least pro days happening over the next 60 days. And look for on Twitter to a bunch of numbers and facts and figures and data and everything else coming out on all these kids that you want to follow, because it's going to be widely available. Normally these pro day numbers aren't widely available. This year it's going to be spread like wildfire. So it's going to be 2 months worth of constant refreshing the Twitter machine to see who ran what and who jumped what and who measured in this, and the rising senior days are also going to be pretty big too.
There you go. I got up on our video screen there the top quarterbacks you guys have identified for the first round. Steven is asking us, are we going to do the wide receivers and tight ends for the next show? Let's target that, guys. Danny, your final thoughts.
Yeah, in terms of this week, I think again, like you said, Aldo, tip of the hat to Jim Nagy in the Senior Bowl. There was questions in terms of will they be able to get good players to come down and risk and all that stuff, and I think what happened was, I think the bigger names decided to come down because of the fact that this was going to be their own opportunity to be in front of these GMs and in person. Guys like Devontae Smith and Najee Harris and Mac Jones and some of the bigger names at college football came in and participated because of the fact that this was their only opportunity. So I think that was a really pleasant surprise. I think the whole thing went off with a huge success in terms of giving us access, the media, to be able to see these coaches' tapes, via remote and all that stuff. So I think that's an awesome experience. Now, moving ahead, the one thing I'm trying not to be, recency bias and because I've seen this kid play and I haven't seen the other kid play, but after this week, I'm really, really thinking hard about making Mac Jones my 4th overall quarterback and pushing Trey Lance down to 5th. And I know it's not gonna be a popular decision, but man, it's like, I see this kid and I see, not just the year and a half he's put together in terms of stats, but just the way he interacts with his teammates, his coaching staff, the praise he gets in terms of his ability to, like we talked about earlier, learning the playbook. 2.5 days, and this guy had the offense down pat. So I understand the questions in terms of athletic ability. It's going to be there. But, man, you take a look at this guy doing it, for a year and a half against top-level competition, and take a look at a kid like Trey Lance, talented as heck. But having the year, not his fault, but not playing this year and just having the 1 year, it's really tempting to bump Mac Jones up to the 4th overall quarterback in this draft in terms of rankings for me. So that's something that I came away with this week.
Yeah, prepared to get a lot of shit because I did that in a tweet. It's just kind of speculation and throwing it out there. And boy, did people come at me. Mac Jones, what are you talking about? He's a day 3 talent and so forth. No, he's not. Mac Jones is a first-round talent, and he'll be lucky if he drops down to 20 in this NFL.
He won't be there. I firmly believe right now that he will not be there at 20. If you want Mac Jones, you got to go get him. And I have a feeling. I'm telling you, I think Carolina's going to take him. I think Carolina's going to take him number 8. I just have this sneaky suspicion. So,
well, and then there's this rumor now that New England Patriots have their eye on him. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. Hey, Danny said it in our last show, and I think, Neil, you agreed. This is the year where you got to do it again. You got to trade up and grab your quarterback, but you got to get it right this time. And hopefully with Matt Nagy and John DeFilippo and the other guys, Ryan Pace will have less of a say in who is drafted as quarterback in the first round, because you got to get this right. You got to get it right. And the veterans that are out there, I don't see Deshaun Watson coming to this team. I don't see him, first of all, approving a trade to Chicago. I don't care what Michael Vick says. Michael Vick says he's going to talk to Deshaun Watson and tell him Chicago's one of the teams you should contemplate. I don't see that happening. I don't see the Bears having the resources. They need to trade a quarterback. Whatever team is going to make a trade with the Texans, they need a quarterback in return. And so would it be possible to sign Mitch Trubisky and then put him as part of the package going to the Texans? And would the Texans even entertain the thought of a Mitch Trubisky? I don't see it. You guys see it?
I don't think you're talking about a sign and trade like what they do in the NBA. I don't think that applies here with the NFL. No, that's one of the reasons why you're like, even if say, for example, they don't want a Sam Darnold, the Texans, but you get the number 2 overall pick where you can go and pick your quarterback. You can pick your quarterback that you're going to move on with here. So, it's interesting what Houston said at the press conference when they introduced a new coach that, they have no intentions of trading him. We'll see if that was just, talk just to kind of drive up the price tag of the player. We'll see what happens. But, I don't know. I think once cooler heads prevail, I think once the new coach and the new GM, possibly, Josh McCown, there's rumors he's going to be part of that coaching staff. Everyone loves Josh McCown. Of course, Lovie Smith now is the defensive coordinator. Lovie Smith will get in there and maybe talk with him as well. And I think cooler heads will prevail. I think Deshaun Watson will stick around. But again, even if he doesn't, even if they're saying, all right, we're going to trade him. You talked about it, Aldo. I think the salary cap is going to be an issue. And I think just the actual draft capital you have to give up. I did find out, Neil, I don't know if you knew this or not, but as a rule, you cannot trade more than 3 first-round draft picks in a row. So
I heard that this week.
Yeah, so the Bears can only go, like, say, this year, next year, and another third year. So they can't go 4 years. So they can't go 4 first-round picks unless it's a future first-round pick, something like that. So
it's just ridiculous, though. I would even if that was legal, I wouldn't even entertain that. That's ridiculous.
Right, and like Aldo mentioned last show, that you're totally giving up your ability to replenish, some of the talent on this team. You're going to lose players due to free agency, due to age, due to injury, and you need some of that depth. And the draft is where you get it. So. It's just a pipe dream, even if he's available.
Yeah, somebody on Twitter yesterday was saying it was reacting to a post, I think from Field Yates, who works over at ESPN, former NFL front office person, that the Texans have not had a first-round draft pick. Not the Texans, the Rams have not had a first-round draft pick in many years, and look at where they are. Well, what I'm saying is, look at where they are. They are in salary cap hell. Mm-hmm. They cannot re-sign Leonard Floyd. They cannot make some significant free agent acquisitions to shore up an offensive line that is starting to fray. Their left tackle, Andrew Whitworth, it may not even play next season. He's starting to the wear and tear on his body. There's some other offensive line issues. They've made some investments into some key players, Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey, those 2 wide receivers, Kupp and Woods, and those are all good investments. And now they have a significant investment in Matthew Stafford. But we all know that it takes more than one guy or 2 or 3 guys to win a team. This isn't basketball where you can win championships on a nucleus of 2-3 players. You need a really good, solid cast of excellent players. And so I'm concerned that not that I really care, but my point is that the Rams, I think, are going to have some issues of sustaining success because of the cap issues that they have. So so when people are saying, well, look at, the Rams, they haven't had a number 1 draft pick. Well, they haven't had a Super Bowl win either. So right. It's been a lot of trickery going on here. So I would prefer, just like I think you guys do, I know Danny does for sure, and I bet Neo does too, build with the draft. It helps with the salary cap issues. It helps with getting players acclimated to your system from the day one that they arrive. You don't have to teach them new tricks and so forth. Do it that way. It's just a much better way to do it. And if you can't do it that way, if you're forced to do it through free agency and trades, then you do it that way. But first and foremost, it's the NFL draft, and that's why we are here, guys.
Yep. Do it the draft. That's what it's there for, man. That's what it's there for.
I don't think anybody wants to go home. Look at Steven's got these long chats. But we better pull the plug on this, guys. So we're back here in about 10 days or so. So have fun looking at the tape. And that's it, everybody. Thanks for watching Draft on Tap. We've got another very busy schedule on the Bears Barroom Network here. So follow us on social media at Bears Barroom, our Facebook page, and so forth, and we'll keep you on tap as to what's happening and when. And those of you watching on this YouTube channel, just hit that subscribe button and hit that little bell, and it will tell you when we have live programming so that you can interact with us. All right, guys, take care, and we'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
All right. Man, where's my closing? Well.